Good evening, and welcome to Mechanics of the Fourth Wall. Joining myself and Antonio Subirats tonight is Chris D of Channel CD. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
It's all good. It's all good here.
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. And how you doing, Antonio?
I'm good. I was sleep deprived when I was on Globebusters, but I'm fine today. Nathan, are you
I
hearing?
think you're a bit sleep deprived too after your last feed, aren't you, Chris?
Yeah, guys, if you notice anything in my voice just from yesterday's stream, going on 8 hours, but it's all good. Feeling good today.
Good, good. Nathan, I think there might be a bit of a delay.
Excellent. I think so. We'll just have to pause and let there be a gap so we're not talking over each other.
That's okay. Okay. So, Chris.
Cool.
Yeah, you want me to go ahead and intro? I mean, I guess a lot of people who are probably joining today know who I am, but I have a channel called Take Back Space, or CEEDEE channel. I'm going to fix that someday. But the whole concept is called Take Back Space, all one word, and it's a concept and it's an actionable item. It's something for people to do in their own lives, in their own journey. And I run a show called Moon TV Live. And it is a streaming show for space, mainly the moon, but of course we've done Saturn, Jupiter, Nebula, etc., and it's just going to get better and better, and trying to get newer tech and get streaming technologies ahead of the game. And you know, I'm someone who has a similar journey, but also a different journey than many of you. I've lived in many places. I've done a lot of things. I've been independent for a very long time. I've been on the truth journey for over 20 years, and I'm only 35. I've studied many different aspects of it. I've fallen into many of the same plot issues that many of you have fallen into as well. But I've come out at 34, you know, last year when I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to believe anything without really going deep. And if I don't test it and I don't find anything, then I'm fine with saying I don't know. And if I find something that I think is right, I'm going to say, hey, I think this is right. I'm just going to be as honest as possible about my findings and stop trying to tell people things that I'm not sure of, because it could be potentially wrong. And that's practicing one, respect to human beings, and also it's practicing self-awareness, and it's also helping me not waste time pretending that I know the answer to things when I don't.
Also, it helps when you. Sometimes you might find yourself answering a question you're not really sure what the answer is, but you've got a gist of what it might be, and by answering it, you then start to believe that you know the answer. So the belief sits there, and it basically just it slows down knowledge from entering when you already have a belief. So it's a good way to be, to just admit that you don't know when you don't know.
Absolutely. It's one of those things I learned in business efficiency. When you're working with a team, if you pretend that you know what you're doing, you're going to be the weak link in the chain. If you're a user experience designer who says, yeah, I know how to do user experience, and you don't know how to do user experience, that website is going to be shit. You know, if you're a creative director who doesn't look at anybody else's work, your work is going to look like it's 10 years old. And that's just how it is. It's 100%. Literally, it's 100%. Sometimes, well, no, actually, in my experience, it's almost 100%. It's not 100. Nothing is really 100%. But in my experience, I've seen creative directors follow exactly the same pathways. The patterns emerge after a while. You see developers who don't pay attention to the trends and they fall behind. You see developers who create the trends and they always have work and they always produce stellar stuff. And you just apply that to whatever else you're interested in, and it works.
Yeah, and it stops you relying on flukes, or you know, there are companies that have survived on flukes, literally flukes. But it's a way of making sure that things survive without requiring a fluke.
Right. No one wants to be a one-hit wonder. I mean, we laugh at one-hit wonders, and you know, it's almost a misnomer in a way, because culturally one-hit wonders now are actually good songs compared to what's out there today. But that whole notion of you don't want to be known for just one thing.
Yeah.
You want to be a master of all. You want to be a master generalist. You don't want to be you know, somebody who does brain surgery, but you don't know how to tie your shoelace. Like that's
Yeah, and you want to learn. We're here for as long as we are. What are we going to do? Just not learn? You know, just accept things that are brought to us for us to basically just absorb as if they're knowledge, and not actually discover our own things. You know, we can discover things that become knowledge for other people, just like Tesla discovered things. You know, he never stopped learning, and that's part of life.
Here's a hypothetical, and Nate, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, which is, what if, you know, I used to think, oh, let's save everyone. Let's wake up everybody. There are people who everyone has to wake up. But what if there are some sponges? What if there are some potatoes? And what if there are some carrots? And what if there are some Neos? And some Trinities? And some, you know, and some Trumans? What if Mark is a Truman? He's a Truman. If you know, like, everyone's got their thing. It's all in the eye of the beholder. If you truly fall on your quest and you really realize what they're trying to tell you, the dichotomy of the brotherhood of the snake is really trying to teach us that if you choose, that's what it is.
Yeah,
and
it
everyone
sounds a bit
is too
too
afraid.
to say it's all about choice, though, eh?
Well, because choice is presented to us as like choose or die, as a very black and white option. Because people don't like to, and I you know, that's a bad way to put things. People don't like is a very lame generalization, which I'm trying to get away from in my life. I've just been around too many people who have used that generalization. But in my experience, people that I've met tend not to use mental acuity to jump to these types of conclusions that I'm talking about right here. and you know.
Sorry, Chris.
No worries. Please.
I think it's that people take the idea of choosing, you know, making a choice, but really the first step is making a decision. Do you want to accept that you have to choose that you have to make a choice? Do you want to consider things? Do you want to make a decision that takes you in a different direction? That's a choice, whether you use your own initiative or not. You're choosing to use your own initiative, but the initiative to use that comes from you, and that's a choice. You have that choice.
I'm with you. I think it's a matter of thinking about it in terms of a tree structure or maybe an umbrella structure. When we talk about choice, it's not simply making a choice. Let's say you're a person at a crossroads, at the fork in the road, and there's a left and a right sign, and this is the first time you've been there. This is the factor variable that changes. It's the when. It's the XYZ of the when in space and time that this moment is occurring, that the photon or the standing wave is waiting to be acted upon by the beholder, which is you and me and Nathan and the viewers right now. So the frame of reference at that crossroads, that's where you have a choice, one choice. Once you make that choice for the first time, there's redundancy, there's the ripple effect. Every time you make that choice, it'll be a better choice, or it'll be a worse choice, depending on which way that ripple goes or extends outwards. So what I'm saying is the level of expertise, and I keep talking about this, it's not just making the choice, it's making the choice 10,000 times until you don't make the choice, until you are both choices. It doesn't matter what choice you make. Do you understand? It's getting past the idea of making a choice. For me, it's no longer about making a choice.
Do you think? Sorry. Do you think the impetus to make a choice, to see the ability of decision, do you think that comes from a hardwired physical neurological situation, or do you think it could come from something like an elsewhere, a spirit, a bigger thing that allows you to notice this? And if so, do you think the potatoes might be people whose thread is just very, very thin and they don't receive the full signal?
Well, wow, that's a lot. Those are 4 things I want to answer.
Yes.
Okay, so the potato people, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult anybody out there, because everyone has a role to play, and maybe. But to go backwards, I think what it is that if you look at it magnetically, and I really think I'm getting there, I'm finally trying to understand this in a magnetic understanding. It's the twin opposing vortexes, so there is a black and white to it. the thing is, it's the choice seems like a 50-50, but it's not. It's a phi choice. It's a golden ratio choice, which means it's exponential, and it's also based on a phi ratio. It's not moving 50-50. You can't just say, it's not this, it's not that, it's this, it's that. That's not how the world actually functions at all. It's always moving in flux, so choices are being made, and basically the things that you're making choices about are moving with the choice that you're making. So there's no choice to be made at all. In fact, you're just moving along a pathway, and it's a different speed at which you're moving, and it's a different XYZ coordinate in spatial time. And if you choose to perceive it as that, and the only reason I say that is because of your penultimate question about, is there an external? And I think about this all the time, because right now, essentially, my mind is blank, but my frontal cortex is talking to you about extremely deep, like tangential stuff about, 5-6 layers deep, maybe touching upon 20-30 years of history, childhood memories. I'm touching upon a multitude of dimensions right now in my own mind. I'm also watching you. I'm also thinking about what's going on, about last night. It depends on how much you want to press our minds, and we talked about this early on, artificial intelligence, but maybe it's not artificial. This whole idea of synthesis and artificiality is part of what we, I think is part of the whole conspiracy thing. The whole Hollywood message is also telling you that it's black and white, vote or die, vote or die. But it's not vote or die. It's actually, why do you want to vote? Why do you want a leader? It's way deeper. It's like the question, and that's not even very deep. That's just like that would be the obvious question. And we don't live in an obvious reality. We live in a backwards ass Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland reality. But this is where it gets very funny, is because if you just step outside and you realize that you can tap into a vast wealth of knowledge, you can perceive things on a multidimensional level, you're already performing magic. You're already a magician, or you're already super duper powerful. Okay.
And take a good look at what's outside, and immediately discovered something that's now no longer a one-hit wonder, thanks to you and several other people, which I'm hoping you can tell us a bit about, which is the Lunar Wave and what it is.
Okay, so I'll try and tackle it. I'm not going to say what it is. I have no idea what it is, but
Sure.
I can tell you that when I first got into astronomy and astrophotography, I got into it through Bill Bryson and, of course, Crow's videos. And then after I saw Crow's videos, I was very intrigued by it, as everyone was. And I immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was a holographic projection. I started looking outside, and I was like, okay, that's an image in the sky, and they're just showing us a light show. It's all serious, that light that falls in the Truman Show. It's exactly like that. It's under the dome. It's every freaking thing you've seen. And everything I've seen. And think about how much content, and Antonio, I'm sorry, you said this, I think, on the other show, that you've learned so much in the past year or so. Imagine the amount that you've learned. And all of us have, right? Just by being rebellious and anarchists somewhat, and, slacktivists, by sitting on our couches and trying to rebel against the system by watching videos, and feeling that we're doing part by learning, right? I mean, it is. It
is, and also it's the learning, like you said before, the ramifications. The learning doesn't happen in a way that you expect. You expect to take in more information regarding certain subjects that you're interested in, but the learning that's happening right now is how to relate to other humans, how to present yourself, how to absorb information, how to notice things that you assumed that you were already aware of, but like for instance, noticing the lunar wave. There will have been so many people that would have looked at that wave, wouldn't have even registered, or would have assumed it was an error to do with the camera. They just wouldn't have, it wouldn't have registered. So Crow's Crow 777, this is for anybody out there.
Right.
He's already, learning. He's already like dropping certain preset parameters that society establishes, like you were saying, vote or don't vote, black or white, is life or death. It's like, no. There's all kinds of other realms that the matrix would rather we didn't know. So Crow is already pulled down some of those barriers. He's looking at the moon, and he noticed how many people have looked at the moon at the same time when that has happened and haven't noticed. And this is what I'm getting to. You notice, for instance, how friendship happens. You know, we're all in different locations. We feel this affinity. We know that we're all good people. We know this. We don't. It's not something we have to discover. It's something we've learned just immediately. It's a new experience, and the things that we're learning aren't, like I'm saying, bringing it back. It's not just specific subjects. There are a variety of areas that we weren't even aware we had things to learn from. It's just fascinating to me.
It's totally true. I mean, I'm going to try and keep it back because I really like where you're going, man. We could talk about the kind of psychology of it because I love that stuff, and I think that's really some of the most important things that we don't talk about in the truth movement. It's very deep and calm psychological discussion about each other, love, the original wound, you know, mothers. I can't talk about it really without actually getting really upset, but
Yeah.
deep down, because we all have some issues.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the waves so I can stick on science for a second. I'm a little bit tired, if you'll excuse me. So, so the lunar wave thing is something that is also, I'm going to try and explain this in a little bit more of a complex way because people want to hear about this. Now, if you study sound waves and heat waves, and you study research, and when I say study, I just mean type into YouTube sound waves, heat waves, visualizations of sound waves and heat waves, experiments on heat waves, and like basic stuff, and just sit there the same way you sit there for a 3-hour talk show, sit there and watch all these experiments, and stop. The only thing I would recommend is to stop being black and white about it's fake, it's not fake. Just calm down. There's no reason to do that. If you analogize it to the fork in the road, it's like looking at that sign and being like, I don't have to worry if it's left or right. I'm just going to take one of it, and the next time I'll take the right one, and the next time I'll take the left one, and the next time I'll take the right one, or maybe I'll take 10 left ones, and stop worrying about whether it's left or right. Just take the freaking path. That's the basic and simplest analogy I can give a person. It's the same, and a quicker one for maybe the younger audience is like when you play a video game, when you play Tetris, for example, a simple video game, or Scrabble, a simple board game. You play it at a level. They talk about it all the time. You play it at a level. And then 10,000 hours later, you're not even blinking and you're schooling everyone. And it's just not that you're a better person. See, so if you remove ego from it, that person's not better than you. You should not be jealous of that person. You should engage with that person and learn from them, because that's what a proton does. You know, somebody who's interested in generative thinking. I think that's where it has to go, because look at all the negativity we already have. YouTube, I can't look up literally, I mean, not that and I'm not a heliocentrist, geocentrist, flat earther, or concaver. I'm just putting it out there. I think it's way more complicated than I can imagine. And if I can't imagine what it looks like, I don't know if I trust anyone to tell me exactly what it looks like. So, but I will say that if you look at the animations that they've done and you look at the satellite stuff and you say, okay, maybe these are real. Let's see what they're talking about. And so look at this animation. I'll tell you guys what it is. Let's see where it is. It's called How the Earth Works as Seen from Space, all parts. And it's going to just trigger that whole, it's CG, it's fake reaction. But if you look at it, you'll see what happens in Antarctica, and you'll see the freezing over in the salt water, and you'll see the vertical push down of the ice, and you'll see how the Earth is actually the waves and the currents, it's a magnetic floating ball of water spinning in freaking ether in some sort of incredible way. It's just incredible, yes, but it's not impossible. You know what I mean? You have to really consider that it's bigger than us.
Definitely. Can you for any?
Oh, so the wave, right? I'm going back to the wave. Okay, let's do the wave.
Can you
All right,
explain
So
to the
sound waves,
what the wave actually is?
Yeah, man. So So we have 4 or 5 parts to we have the atmosphere, the troposphere, stratosphere, thermosphere, and the exosphere, right? These are different induction levels for light and heat, right? So we're looking at everything in space through these 5 or probably more or less layers that we know of that do something to light, heat, sound, everything, and energy from space. And so I'm saying it's really hard to make a determination because I have no concept of what's going on. I'll list out a couple of things that I didn't even know existed. Okay, these are orbital elements. There are 6 orbital elements, one of which is eccentricity, inclination, right ascension of the ascending node, the argument of perigee, the length of the semi-major axis. Okay, now all this seems like gibberish, but if you really just calm down, take the ego away, look at each of those words, try and understand what they mean, put it all together, you'll start to see, oh, wow, the geometry might make sense now. The light might make sense. And that's where I've gotten to where I'm like, I got to just stop. It's just hard to do it. It's just really freaking hard and tiring and exhausting and not as fun as just saying it's all fake. But at the end of the day, when you look at the Antarctic and you look at salt water and you see the diamagnetic properties of water and you see how water does create vortices, you see sonoluminescence, these things can exist in these magical looking ways that are just not a projection. You know, they're not lights, they're these magnificent things like Saturn. We were looking at Saturn last night at 4 in the morning, and I'm not lying about Saturn. I'm just sitting there in absolute awe of like what the freak this thing is. And the only thing I can say, and I know I'm going off on this rant, and I'll get back to the wave because it's part of magnetism. I'll explain it within magnetism. Saturn, right, if you just take the Theoria apophasis understanding of the magnetic hypertropoid, which is the hourglass shape in the center, which has the ball, right? And then at the ring of Saturn is the extremity of the giant magnet, right? And the different wave, the red shift, blue shift, goes along these different pathways. And it's explained very simply within these extreme, like the precessional, what is it called? The precessional hyperboloid, right? You have the centrifugal divergent energy and the centripetal convergent energy. And this creates everything. Everything runs on these fundamental forces. And that's the only thing I can really relate in a physical way to like what I'm looking at in the sky. Because if they're running like a 3-dimensional hologram from Antarctica in a base with George Bush, man, there's nothing I can do about that. You know what I mean? But if it's a space where there are a bunch of like greedy scientists and agencies with suits at the top who hire content creators to kind of make more money, then that's something we can beat quite easily. It's not Satan, it's not Satan's, it's not Nazis, it's none of this crap. It's just basic people who are good business people who knew how to play the chess game better than us. We came along halfway through a very powerful, we came halfway through a game with Gary Kasparov, as far as I'm concerned. Halfway into a game of not even knowing how to play with Gary freaking Kasparov. And I'm saying, let's get good.
Yes, and also not knowing whose move it is, you know.
Right,
So,
I mean, that's all it is. It's not Satan, it's not God, it's not any of that shit. It's a really complicated game, and we're like babies at it.
Yes, and they have the money side has all the
and we've got the love and the content side.
Yes,
because we're the creatives and the lovers, and they're the business organizers, the math brain.
They have the analytical mind, but they have this. They're aware that there's an X factor that comes into action that they can't predict. Like for instance, Eric Dollard. You're familiar with his work?
Yes.
So his explanation of the sun breaks the whole astronomical explanation of the sun. The distance, he's saying that there's no way of determining the distance. The only distance they can determine is the distance they can measure from the Earth to the actual heat on our atmosphere. Now, he's not a flat earther. He's saying there's no way of determining where it's actually coming from or even what it is.
This is great. This is great because you're keeping it on the lunar wave thing. Right. Yeah. So there are 2 parts to that. One is, yes, everything resolves to a certain point in the sky, no matter how far it is, right? So it's very hard to make that determination. That being said, in 2012, when they had the Venus transit of the sun, there was triangulation done very high resolution. You can take it or leave it as footage, but it was done, and it was done from different parts of the Earth, which absolutely proves that there is spirituality going on, in my eyes, if it can be done like that. Otherwise, because I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I have, I modeled the flat Earth. I put I did the firmament. I looked into flat Earth very deeply, as much as I would have looked into any other topic. So I'm not disengaged with that in any way. The only problem I have with it is that the concave Earth modeling session, even though that taught me a lot, brought me back into Maya, gave me, all the tools that I needed, kind of revived my skill set. I realized that I wasn't doing moon stuff. This is what's missing. We're missing content. It's got to come down to simple, basic stuff. Like, we already have videos about Hollywood. We know that they're the same people. We know that they're crisis actors. We know that it's fraudulent. We absolutely know. Like, it's already done. In my eyes, anytime it's not to insult anyone, and I know that it's the rah-rah crowd thing. It's like, it's in a way, and the lunar wave thing. Okay, let's do the lunar wave. I know I'm off on a tangent. All right, the closest thing I've seen to the lunar wave in my experience in a laboratory setting is high definition, slow motion photography of sonic pulse waves. It looks like it's because it's a very fine line. It's a very fine ripple wave. It's not like this. I mean, Crow's thing is a little bit different. It looks a lot more like the surface shifts, but the one that I have, both of them look like a very thin scan line. Now, let's dismiss the camera stuff quickly. Both of them, mine, which I'm working on vetting. I'm not saying I've vetted 100% either. I'm not saying they're lunar waves. I'm saying they're lunar anomalies that were captured on film that look like what Crow captured and calls the lunar wave. I'm being very specific about that. I told Crow I'm looking into it. I don't have time to look at it for 12 hours straight up, because I think showing you guys the moon is more important. You see, I have to make that decision. That's the choice that I make every day. It's like, do I stream? Do I exhaust my body and do this just to, is it my ego? Am I doing it for me? And then I think, if I were doing it for me, would I do it? And I question myself, and then I think, no, if I go back to it, there's no content of the moon. Go back to that, and I instantly can make that choice without any ego involved. I don't think about my health. I just there's no, if I want to be useful. If I don't want to be useful, I won't get out of bed, but I don't feel good doing that.
Yeah.
So
can I go back to the triangulation of the Venus transit?
Sure.
So to triangulate, they have to use parameters that are based on spherical geometry, and as we're all aware, to triangulate a point, when your base curve comes into action, you have one distance. If you remove that base curve, you have a different action and you have a different instance. So
Agreed.
if the organs doing the triangulation are triangulating using the curve, they're going to come to a conclusion that verifies the curve. If the triangulation was done by academics checking to see the flatness of the Earth, they would have found the flatness. It's basically what you use as your foundational theory. So I mentioned this because I made a video, one of my earliest videos was about looking at Polaris. So we have, on the sphere Earth, we have people on the northern hemisphere at the same latitude on 3 different longitudes. So all 3 of them in nighttime, all 3 of them looking at Polaris. And when you draw the lines that they're looking at on the sphere, the lines cross over. So the point at which they cross over, either Polaris continues that line all the way to Polaris, and Polaris is in different directions, or it's in one point, which is how I started to get the flat Earth into perspective with my mind. So if you have 2 people looking at the one point in the sky, there isn't a way that it can be explained. And I know that the astronomical explanation is that the light from Polaris bends. That sounds to me like pataphysics trying to patch an error.
Okay, so I'm down to talk about this. I think this is something I think everyone should talk about. This is really what it's about. Okay, so I'm not trying to push either side. to be honest. But let's dive into it, because there is data from that discussion where I think you've reached this threshold where I reached as well. And I did look into it a little bit further, and where I stopped looking into it is the fact that Polaris does change over the long cycle, over the 26,000 year cycle. So in 14,000 years, it'll be Vega again. And it goes through four or three different stars, I think, over a longer period, over the long cycles. And this is part of a wave function. So if you look at it via a wave function, you'll see that beyond Polaris right now, the wave function extends in similar twin vortices ad infinitum, and either slowing down or expanding, right? So it's not just, we're not at the center of the flat Earth with a vortice all the way to Polaris and an inverted vortice all the way down to fuck me, sorry. You know,
General
whatever.
General
Down,
location.
you know, where the demiurge is, whatever, down Shigoleth or whatever. So yeah, it's not just those twin vortices. It extends in both directions all the way. So Polaris is at the center node of basically the same function as an analemma, where it's the crossover between the evenness of the wave functions versus the phi ratio 60-40 going back and forth. It's never in a perfect 50-50 balance, except for that equinoxes, right? Except for the analemma of the sun, except that pinpoint in the center of the infinity symbol, right?
Yeah.
Polaris is probably the center of another infinity symbol, and that's the DNA strand. Look at the DNA strand. It's a whole series of infinity symbols, but you can draw the inverted vortices right over those analemma points, and they'll create the nodal time frame where light slows down and matter manifests in some sort of density. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, yes, light. Okay, and then to answer the light bending question, this is the issue that I have with it. I've done laser stuff. I have a prism. I have a crystal ball. I have videos of all this stuff that I want to show you of how the light actually bends and breaks and stuff like that. The issue that I have is that the moon does things to the sky between, you know, there's stuff happening between us and the moon. The sun is much harder to gauge. You know, when people say it's a luminary, I understand that, because you just like, wow, it's a flat disk. I have no concept. But really look at it, and if you really, and I promise, man, once we start hitting 4K with hydrogen alpha filters and 12-inch scopes, we're going to see prominences that extend in a 3D manner to our eyes. And it's going to be and I'm going to show that on a stream, and it's going to be very hard to say that this thing is a flat 2D disc. For me, it's for me. This is for me to test myself, because I wanted it to be flat. But you know, because it's easier that way. But it's much harder to understand how these fucking geomagnetics are working, to be honest.
Yeah. So like Eric Dollard is saying that he can't figure out whether it's a hemisphere that has no back to it whatsoever, the back of it being at the edge of our atmosphere somehow, or a sphere, but its location, its source of energy, if it's inside our atmosphere, it's drawing energy from the Earth. If it's outside our atmosphere, then it's conveying its energy from wherever it is, so that it manifests at that point that we see in the sky. But if you don't mind me going back to Polaris, sure. If we take all the theory and just rest it for 1 second and look on a practical level, flat or round, either, and we locate two people, one at dusk and one at dawn, and both of those are looking at Polaris. Their line of sight doesn't extend out parallel, as you would expect it to be virtually parallel, so that it converges at a point, so many light years away. It converges at a point that is much too close for it to be converging at a distant Polaris.
I'll tell you why the anomaly could be explained, and I'm not saying that I have the explanation. I'm saying the reason it's fuzzy math, there's a gray area there is because of this. Because if there is a dome-like shape above us in any way, whether it's on a flat Earth or on a, it's our exosphere, let's say, trapping us in Earth, right? At the very pinnacle of the arc, at the very apex, light is going to behave very differently than stars that you see at the horizon. It's going to behave very differently than things you see at 50 degrees SLU. So what I'm saying is Polaris doesn't move from a almost vertical SLU above us at all points on the Earth. If this thing is in any way far away enough to be that far away, then it's going to behave differently at that apex of the lens, of the light passage. And so that bending of the light is something that first of all, I don't have the tools to gauge that. I don't even have a scope that can point high enough to measure Polaris regularly, but I intend to do that at some point once we can point it directly up and just watch that for a while so we can look at it. But I can tell you that there are stars called Pollux and Castor, right? Castor and Pollux, that do move. They hover around Polaris, and sometimes they're at the western horizon for me, very low. Yeah. And so there is this thing called stellar parallax, and it does exist. It just simply, in some sort of means, it does exist. And for me, a 2D version of it, a flattened, layered version, seems honestly way more complex given magnetism, because magnetism denotes either galaxy spirals, right, flattened disks, which is why I understand flat Earth can be enticing. It does denote a flat type. Magnetism does denote that, but it also denotes spheroids in space. Yeah. And so those two models are both relevant. I don't think it's not. It used to be much easier for me to say, oh, there's no way we're spinning on a ball, but now if you really just look at magnetism and look at stuff in, like bubbles of water, they just form.
I wonder what Ptolemy would have made if he'd had the understanding that we have now of electromagnetics. His model with the onion layers, if you want to see
I love
it that
one.
way.
That's the closest if I were to say I was on a side, that would be the closest thing.
This is, from me, and this is from my personal point of view, that's what we have, but over a flat plane, these layers. Now, that's just my conclusion, and it seems to be confirmed by my observations, but I'm aware that we all have confirmation bias. So,
may I ask you guys something? And this is something I posed to my buddies Z Proxy and Cosmic Surfer, who are doing the moon stuff now, who are verdant, hardcore flat earthers, right? And coming from being, a 2-month hardcore flat earther, let me just ask you, when I was looking at it and I really wanted it to be flat, where I stopped believing is when I started to ask myself why I wanted it to be flat.
You see.
Or why do I want it to be flat? Why do I want it to be a ball or flat? It's the same thing with the fork in the road. Then when I asked myself that, I very quickly just felt very foolish to have been called my family and called all my friends and very insanely said, it's definitely 100% flat. I did this thing with the telescope on the horizon. I totally did this enclosed Earth thing, and everyone's believing in it now, and it's this huge. Literally, man, it's the echo chamber. And I've done this for a lot of things, and I fell. Listen, 35 years old, I fell victim to it again. Being somebody who develops campaigns for people like giant corporations, and I know what I'm doing, and I fell victim to it. But what I'm saying at the end of it, when I asked myself why I wanted it to be a conspiracy, is when I stopped believing that it was a conspiracy, and I started to realize, all my studying of the Illuminati and all this ufology stuff, it wasn't for any reason except really for knowledge. It was just for knowledge and to help people. And when I started to realize that I might not be helping people by telling them shit that I didn't know, I stopped instantly and I said, okay, if I tell people something, it's got to be super duper measured. It's got to come from a place of something I can back up 100%. Otherwise, I'm not going to say it, and I'm just going to not feign ignorance, just admit ignorance and be totally fine with that. And that's going to end up looking very, I think, approachable. Because I don't think people like people who are,
There's more integrity, I think, in what you're saying, to look at things honestly. I didn't want it to be a conspiracy. I was a huge science fiction fan. One of my favorite science fiction books is by Arthur C. Clarke, Songs of Distant Earth, which is beautiful. And I didn't want it to be true. There was the cognitive dissonance that everybody goes through, but there was something I've been questioning for more than 20 years, and it's your topic. It's the moon. I've been questioning how it's possible for the moon to be lit from different angles, given that the only way it could actually be lit like that is if we were on the spherical Earth shifting. And for a long time I thought, we're shifting, and the media's not reporting it, astronomers aren't talking about it, because the angle of illumination of the moon is dictated by our latitude. So the nearer the equator, the flatter the moon is. The nearer the north or south pole on a sphere, the more vertical. Like this is a quarter moon.
Sure.
Now, for it to be at the same, you're at the same street corner, same latitude, 2 days difference, not a month, not 6 months. It's almost vertical, then it's much flatter, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? Now, when I got my head around the flat Earth, I thought, that's what's going on. What's going on? I was trying to figure it out as a globe with the theory of the moon and its orbit and our orbit, and it didn't fit. We're not rocking back and forth on the surface of the Earth. There's not these, tectonic shifts. The answer is astronomy doesn't have the answer. That's why I couldn't find it.
Right.
And that's when everything fell together for me and the flat Earth. That's when I started looking at Polaris. That's when I started looking at horizons, everything else. But it was basically the external body of the moon on the globe. It doesn't fit. It really, especially.
Well, this is what I'm saying, mate. See, here's where I stopped. I was right there with you, and then where I got to is like standing at that lamppost. Have I done it 1,000 times? Have I written down the results? Have I measured a longer cycle than I've been alive? You know what I mean? Think about things like that. It's just immediately falls apart because not in no way insulted, like with all due respect.
Don't worry about it.
For me, it's like literally, my friend calls me today. He's like, "What, have you done like hundreds of hours on the moon?" And I look at my folders. I'm like, "Man, it's more like thousands." Yeah. And I still don't think I know all the craters. I mean, it's baby steps, man. It's just got to be like, if we think about it, this is what people dislike about NDT, Neil deGrasse, is that he sounds overly confident. He sounds like every answer has been solved. He's like, no question needs to be asked anymore. This is what we're trying to avoid. That's why, unfortunately, in a way, when some of the flat Earth points are mentioned, they just sound very confident. And there is very much information that is missing, like a lot of it. Well, a lot of it is missing.
So sorry, Chris. This is one of the wonders, one of the things that I think draws people. Well, people's intelligence, people's time. It's the mystery. Is we all know, like we have the dome model, we have the expanding eyes. The answer is we kind of generally. I don't want to speak for all of the flat Earth people out there, but there's a lot of us who know that we don't know the answers, and neither does astronomy. We know.
But we don't know that. We know that we don't know the answers. Yes, that's all we actually know. And in fact, it's singular, if you don't mind me saying.
Yes,
it's personal.
Yes, but where you have the field of astronomy, which says X, Y, and Z, and because, and you go, hold on a second, it isn't actually X, Y, and Z, and the because doesn't fit. Like Polaris, we're told in 12,000 years or something like this, it will change to Vega, and hold on a second, this is based on calculations. This isn't based on observation. It's based on calculations. The observation is, right now, we can look at it, and there's this triangle that doesn't make sense. So we have a theory to patch up the triangle.
Well, this is okay. I'll tell you where we can get it more nuanced and dice it up slightly finer. And this is not to hold you on the point, but I'm saying the way you can dissect that sentence is you're saying the word Polaris.
Yes.
You're already using the word Polaris, and you're saying it's a star. So once you're doing that, you're already using data that you're saying might be flawed. So what I'm saying is I'm going to suspend my judgment of their lying, and this is where I completely disagree with Crow on. We've talked about it on the show, and maybe you guys haven't heard that part, but I talked to him privately as well, and I disagree with him on this because I'm not throwing out all the data. and I'm doing it with the understanding that I'm throwing out all the data. Do you understand? You know what I mean? Because I can't not say the word Polaris, because we need to refer to things. We're so far beyond redefining an entire language structure, an entire chessboard. We have to play the game that's been handed to us. And I'm saying, instead of like, man, I had a great analogy for this, which was, there wasn't like shit or get off the pot. It was like, if you have an Amber Alert for a kid, pointing out that she's lost over and over and over and over again is pointless. At some point, you got to go out and look for her. You know, so what I'm saying is, pointing out that NASA is fraudulent is like saying, "Oh, we're lost." I'm like, "Yeah, I know we're freaking lost."
But I think
how will we get unlost is by finding a map, and I don't mean literally a map. I actually mean like the data that we're missing, which is the fact that if you look at Polaris over a long enough period of time, apparently it does move. And if I can disprove that physically in my own lifetime, then I'll finally be able to make that assessment. But until then, I'm not going to call it Polaris and then say all the data is wrong about it, because that's an oxymoron in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? I don't mean to be a dick about it. Sorry.
No. I get you. I think, you know, really the reason we refer to things like Polaris is just the vernacular makes it easier for people to understand it. You know,
but that in and of itself is part of what we call it. Like, I mean, if the Illuminati created English, then and they're part of Babylon, and they went to the Tower of Babel, and it's all Satan, then we're using a code that's used against us. So what I'm saying is, let's use that code against what we think, or whatever, to love each other. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, I had a thought occurred to me a while back about the English language, and it's the way the English language. I was born and raised speaking Spanish and Catalan, so that was my framework was that. Then I come to England, and people and things are expressed very differently, which is why when you get instructions for your electrical equipment, you have in Spanish or French, you have 3 times more pages that you do in English. English is much more functional for expressing various ideas. And I've thought part of the reason for this is that so many English words have double meanings. And when we're talking, we have to be continuous. Once you're a fluent English speaker, you're continuously assessing which meaning of the word is being used.
Right.
And I don't know if this is right. I mean, I don't know whether anybody's doing any studies into this, but I think that perhaps the inventions that have come into this world from the English-speaking world, they could be due to our ability to very quickly evaluate what's presented to us in reality, as in other people talking and us seeing light and expressing light and knowing that we mean brightness and not lack of weight. All these things could create the perfect consciousness to receive ideas, or to at least express ideas. Yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
You're on a good tangent. Please remind me to get back to the wave, but I'll tell you exactly what I've learned, and this is part of the logos, which is the word. This is the truth. The true meaning of everything really comes back to these words and these letters, and the letters are geometry. Okay, they're basically pictograms and sigils. The original idea of language is based on whatever they looked like, right? It was tonal, right? Guttural or tonal. And so things like O looks like your mouth when you're making the sound. And A and ah, if you turn it sideways, looks like an open mouth. It also looks like looking up towards the sun. If you look at Chinese characters or kanji or katakana, I took some Japanese, I speak French, I speak Arabic, I can write in 4 different. Only Spanish is the one I haven't really gotten a grasp on speaking Spanish, but I tend to be able to read Spanish quite well.
So you know what I mean about the different things being. Some languages have an easier avenue for expressing. So.
You'll love this. You'll love this. What I believe the whole story of Babylon and the baby lawn, all of these words. I know a lot of people cringe about this, and I even had friends that I used to cringe when they went only on this etymological, scavenge hunt. But things like, for example, Tom, Major Tom, right? Mm-hmm. If you study music, you'll see there are major and minor keys, right? Tom is atom, you know. Tom is also a major character, you know, in our cultural literature, in film, etc., right? Bowie, rock star, this whole idea of Major Tom. But then, if you turn Tom around, it's mot, M-O-T. In French, mot is word. It's the
Yes.
word. You know, so you're looking at mot, and then monarch, for example, is monarche, is my arc. You know, it's all references to magnetism. At the end of the day, I have a video, and it's called "Do We Live Inside the Eye?" and then one is Antarctica's the Brain, and I did it based on a geometric kind of sensibility. I tried to find these tangentials, like these connectors, based on the geometry. And if you look at it, Antarctica, even when the ice goes in and out, melting around it, looks like a brain. Looks like this. It really does. It looks like a human brain, and the little thing that goes. And if you look at it, the pineal gland is the exact pole on Earth. So there's this geometry that we're akin to an infant in a cell. I think the Earth is basically a zygote. We're like in this kind of holographic instance of birth. This is this whole awakening. I think we've been in this kind of slumber. And this is an energetic thing. This is okay. So wait, I'm going off on a tangent. So the words, the Tom, monarch, like George Soros, right? For example, George Soros. Take away the S's. You have oro, like the Ouroboros, right? The golden circle.
And gold itself in Spanish is oro.
Exactly.
O-R-O. Yeah.
Exactly. You have our aura or aurora. You know, and then you have the snake eating its tail. But not only is the snake eating its tail, if you look at Google Earth, you'll find the snake eating its tail on the globe. You'll find the head of a giant snake encircling the globe. And you know what the snake is? The snake is the flow of the vapors coming from Antarctica as the salt water melts and creates the flux of the water currents that keeps Earth alive. It's very fascinating that we're in a living ecosystem. And I think it's a very complicated system that runs on geometry, you know, and a lot of different things that we're just learning.
Well, you know, earlier when you mentioned the loop of infinity and the DNA, you're the perfect guy to talk about this. So we have the energy, and let's put flat or round to the side. Let's talk from an experiential level. So we have energies, we have electromagnetisms, we have effects of electromagnetism that vary, various different effects. If you put it against a screen, it has one effect. If you put it against ore, it has lots of different effects that we don't fully understand. And I think Tesla, unfortunately, left this world before it put everything down. I'm wondering whether the energy, so the energy from the sun, the energy from the moon, which has these peculiarities, and we are energetic beings, and our DNA seems to be perfectly shaped for receiving a very specific signal, so our own signal. I'm wondering if there's a connection, or if there is a connection, what kind of instrumentation would be able to detect what the energies are, what direction they flow in, how they flow. Do they come from my point and exit at another point?
I'll give you a great answer. I've got an answer for you on both of those.
Brilliant.
Okay, so let's say we believe in sonoluminescence, light and sound through water, right? This is an experiment that can be done in a laboratory. You can blast sonic frequencies at different oscillations and different hertz, measure those hertz, blast them into water, and create concave bubbles. You can create the geometry that we see in our skies in space. That's an experiment that it's costly, it's difficult, but very few people have done it outside the mainstream, you know, laboratories. And why don't we have not a single person in our movement does stuff like that? That's what I'm talking about. That kind of bugs me a little bit, is that there's a lot of time spent exposing stuff that's already been done by people we already know are fraudulent.
If I can just jump in there, I think these things will come. I think for now, most of us are still reeling.
Hey, I
So,
feel you, man. Listen, I push hard because I'm a creative director and I have a team of people. So I always sound like I'm kind of giving people a hard time, but I give myself a hard time too, at the same
yeah,
time, because life is not only long, but it's also like a lot can be done.
yeah,
Life is not short. It's definitely not short. Um, and it's definitely not pointless.
mm,
There's definitely a point. So as long as that's there, then there's something to do. And if there's something, and for me, it's actually just more fun. Think about it, man. It's just like I can't stand looking at these guys. And I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. Women of NASA.
yeah,
I got that in my feed today. Women from NASA.gov, women of NASA. These people don't represent us. That's what we
no,
have to hammer home. But it's not just saying they don't represent us. We have to say who represents us, what represents us. Why do we need representation at all? Do we need women at NASA? And it's not, do we need women at NASA? I mean, it's just like, do we need videos about this ridiculous stuff, or would we like to see pictures of what Lucifer or Hubble or updated stuff on space that we deserve to know because we're taxpayers? Like, can we focus in on things that are manageable for us to change? Is what
yeah.
I'm saying. Even if we're reeling, we can still do productive things.
Yeah, but I don't know, I might be a bit naive, but I'm thinking that there's more people get on board with trying to find out exactly where we do live, what the shape of it, the energies involved. There'll be physicists, there'll be experimental physicists. Sooner or later, I think it's going to happen. I don't think that NASA's conclusion and its interaction with astronomy has basically just ended. And they will carry on developing their theories. I think it will branch off to experimental physicists, basically taking back their honor rather than being used to confirm the theories of theoretical physicists. It will be back to the original.
Okay, so here's a good segue back. So we haven't had official footage of anything that looks like a lunar wave, right? We haven't had any official corroboration of the event.
No
And we haven't
mention.
had any scientists actually take it seriously.
No mention whatsoever. So, sorry, if I can just say, when you were
No
talking
worries.
about representation, I think representation is an illusion. I think the whole idea of representation is an illusion to make us defer to others. Like, I represent me, you represent you, we all represent ourselves individually.
I'm with you, and in one route, if you're talking philosophically, I'm sorry, this guy's buzzing on the chainsaw again outside. On one level, philosophically, yes, but on another, it could be argued that that basically a representation, verbatim, literally, is just you representing information that you've studied. And there's nothing wrong with that in my eye. It could be a very ambivalent, neutral position. It doesn't have to be just an evil representative, because there are, yes, and there are also not.
Yeah, but
And
when
there are
we
also
have...
people who represent things really well but are annoying to listen to. And there's some people who represent things super poorly but are still great to watch. You have to take it on every single level and then discern. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
From my point of view, I look at people like Noam Chomsky, and I see that he's not representing any group.
He is, though. I love it. Great. People like Noam Chomsky, people like Richard Dawkins, okay? People like Christopher Hitchens, people like Aleister Crowley. These types of people, when you hear that people that you have heard of who worship those people, do you see how far away we are from actually getting footage of the moon?
Yes, so
Not to be an ass, but that's what I'm saying. How far deep we are on personalities of people that might not even exist.
Yes, this is what I was getting at. So, say Noam Chomsky explaining the revolution, the conscious revolution, the revolution of consciousness studies. So he's talking from his point of view, from his studies. He's presenting his thing. So yes, he works for MIT and so on. But in terms of what he is doing, is just, that's it. You can take that as at face value, as this guy is just talking his ideas, or you can consider that he's the face of that specific branch of academia. Okay, the idea that we have representatives, we've had that inculcated so easily. You know, take us to your leader. Now, leader is one of the things about the whole flat Earth movement is there is no leader. We're understanding actually there's a lot of illusions, and I can see Nathan smiling there because this is basically the you know what we've been trying to expose with the fourth wall mechanics is the illusions that we're given, that we accept, that we don't know are illusions. So the one reason I applaud you and Triple Crow, sorry,
Triple shot.
Crow. I said that I referred to him like that earlier today. Crow 777 is you've managed to somehow break that conditioning and observe something true and real and verifiable. So you haven't done that because your mind was set by astronomy where you never would notice. You already had the malleability to accept that. And I'm thinking, okay, I think, you know, I could be wrong, you know, or all of us could be wrong. We could all be, you know, the skeptical argument. We could just be, you know, a meme in the dream of some other being. But there are things that we accept that we don't know we're accepting from a source of being pure illusion, like representatives. We know the whole charade of politics. We know this, but we still have representatives. We still adhere to that idea. And
True, but it comes back down to this whole black and white thing where right now the three of us are leading. When we shut down the stream, we'll stop leading. Do you know what I mean? It's not just there's a leader of the flat Earth and there's a leader of the concave Earth and there's a leader of the global Earth. It's not like that. It really isn't. And talking about it in that way makes it that way, is what I'm saying. And
yes.
If you realize what it actually is the fact that you took the initiative, Nathan, to start a stream, to talk about your convictions. You took the initiative, Antonio, to get in touch or to get on stream. I took the initiative to reach out and not just have an ego issue, or, you know, I took the initiative to say, hey, I'm not going to show my face, take it or leave it, and Patricia did the same. Everyone makes choices, but it's not black or white, because all day long you're making these micro choices.
Yes.
It's all micro, macro, symmetrical, up and down, right? So, so the thing about what I wanted to do, yes, I've always been interested in astronomy and truth-seeking, but really what Moon TV came out of is how can I be most productive? How can I actually change things and be really productive, like the most efficient. Like, it took me a while. It took me a long time. I made a lot of flat Earth videos that I didn't post. I made a lot of concave Earth videos I didn't post. I just made a lot of videos. I showed myself. I didn't show myself. God damn these guys. They're just always cutting down trees. Is it okay? That's good?
We can't hear it.
It's just driving me batty. I'm trying to get a train of thought going.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that I sat on them for a while, like studying my own work and putting myself as an outside observer, because that's what we tend to do as humans. We always have this person watching ourselves behave, which is part of that external, the Akashic record type situation, if you want to think about it that way. But you don't think that you're really storing all information that you've ever thought of in your tiny little head. It's impossible. It must be stored in some larger quantum field. It's got to be something like that.
Yeah, it would be futile because it would end in the grave. So there would be little point to it. It's like, you know, like having all your stuff on a hard drive that can die. If you've got important stuff, you save it in, you know, the
right.
The forms.
So let's talk about leadership and following people in terms of vibration and in terms of specularity, right? Not speculation, but like flickering, like a light, right?
Yes.
You're leading and you're not leading. You're leading and you're following. You're sometimes following yourself. You're sometimes not following yourself. You're sometimes paused entirely. Sometimes your brain just stops working and you start judging yourself from a completely different perspective. And so one, I believe, and I hold myself to this, is that I have to use those mechanics to judge my truth-seeking, to judge my work, to judge my art. And if I don't, I tend to falter. So it's become an efficiency pattern. It's about productivity and efficiency at the end of the day, and that's how I've learned to temper my conspiracy notions and my attitude and my anger at the whole system, because it's enraging. Of course, man, you don't think I'm enraged? I'm enraged, but
it's part of that rage is
impossibly useless. For me as an artist, it doesn't work.
Yes.
That,
Well,
maybe it works for other people, but it doesn't. Like rage always makes me just stifled and kind of paralyzed.
yeah, I think that the part of the reason people get angry is that obviously everything's worthy of anger. But I think that, like Goebbels said, make the lie big enough that it seems so monstrous people can't conceive of it being true. I think they're so
Let's talk.
clever.
Let's dissect that. Let's dissect that because those are things that I react to very immediately. My gut goes to that, and I used to take that and eat it. And instead, what I started to do is dissect that. So Goebbels did a lot of things.
Yes, and a lot of
Let's
things.
study that guy. Okay, if you're really interested in what that guy had an effect on us today, let's go and really study. And I did. And
Yeah.
so if you really want to kind of figure out what was going on, look at focus groups. Understand focus group research and how those questions are posited. Look at probability and statistical analysis, and you'll understand the sinister means by it. But my problem is, like, Antonio, you and Nathan nod, and I know that you understand what I'm saying, and I know that some people do. But we have to admit that others will just take that line from Goebbels and be like, fucking Nazis, fucking Nazis, oh, they're fucking Nazis, done. And done. At the end of the day, they go to their kids and they're like, fucking Nazis. And I'm not, and please, I know I'm cursing and whatever, but that's that attitude of never looking deeper than that. Okay, we got Goebbels. Okay, who did he know? Who did he work for? How much money did he make? Like, where did he end up? Like, all of those matter to that point. They all do.
But if I can just say, Chris, sorry, so I don't mean you to lose your thread.
No, not at all.
One of the things we have to bear in mind is that we know that history is written by the victor, and when people are quoted, like, say, Goebbels said this, we weren't there and we didn't hear what he said. He might have been saying what the other people use is they make a lie so monstrous, we don't really know. But what I was referring to is the anger that so many of us have felt towards conspiracies. The anger. I think that's part of the reason they do the things, the hoaxes, the false flags, the scaremongering, is to keep us at that vibration, because I think that vibration interrupts clearer thinking.
Okay,
so I wanted to bring it back. Yeah,
let's dissect that, because those false flags not only do that, they do a multitude of things all at once, and all of those things are measured and gauged within a probability and statistical computer, and they're done based on very probable laws of outcomes. They know exactly what's going to happen. And it's not just a sinister means. It's about obfuscating. It's about making money. It's about distraction. It's about using the people that they made promises to. It's about diverting even Congress's attention away from certain things. I'm no longer of the mind that everybody in Congress is bought and sold. I think these people are just fat old rich people who just couldn't care less about their constituents, and they just follow a system. There have to be there are potatoes.
People that people will peg as being liars, and it's complete farce.
Carry on, Nathan.
Carry on, Nathan. Yeah, please.
Well, I was just going to say that the amount of people that will actually say this guy, and it immediately springs to mind, you've got Brian Cox, or you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson earlier. Now, it may be the case that he's forthright because he's trained well in his expert field, and then feels he has the right to be, dogged and determined in what he says. But that doesn't make him a liar.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I've been to one of his lectures, and I asked him a question about Pluto and actually UFOs, and he actually made a mockery of the question, which was very typical of, unfortunately. And Brian Cox responded to me on Twitter also in a kind of mocking way, showing me that LRO photo. And I met Brian Greene, author of The Elegant Universe. The original, when I first really broke through, was The Elegant Universe. If some of you are in their 30s, you remember 1998 when they talked about quantum and string theory in a way that made sense to nerds for the first time in a visual way. That broke free for me. I was like, wow, are we really sitting on these, it's mostly space. It's mostly, and now I know that it's counter space. Basically from the study, that's why I was saying Tesla is gone, right? But we have this guy, this tattooed, amazing guy who just curses like a sailor, who lost his wife to cancer, who has nothing to really do except to tell us about magnetism. And for some reason, I feel like this guy is this amazing gem. And of course, you know, he is popular, but he's so under the radar, and he's so much smarter than most of the people that we see on TV. This guy represents the true people. So I feel like the things that we can do that are productive are support good people, right? Support calmness, support love. You know, if you think that Goebbels is a sinister bastard, go research the dude. The more you know about your enemies, the way better. I mean, truthfully, you don't need to know about people who like you. You need to know about people who hate you more, right? And if
keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah, I mean, we quote these movies, but let's act upon some of these principles because they are dogmatic. I mean, listen, dogma is not bad if used to the right effect. Like this whole idea that we always use these words that they're really trigger words, man. It's like an intellectual versus a plebeian understanding of vocabulary. If you don't know what the word means, you're going to take it to mean something that it doesn't mean, and that's what we talk about all the time. And the people who even admit to it use those words to define things that they think are 100% real. It's just like it doesn't make sense. It really, and it's a waste of time because you're not getting anywhere. It's just you wake up the next day with the same question. And for me, now I have answers to things that I never thought I could have an answer to, which one is, when I look at the moon, it's there. They're not creating, there's no man that I know of that I've met in the industry who can create an object like that.
So
No.
you say it's there, Chris, but would you say it's solid, liquid, gas, or light? You say it's
that's
there,
what
but what is it?
Awesome. What does it matter?
Question.
What does it matter? What will I do with that information? If I could tell you flat out, Nathan, it's a two-dimensional disk with a flat side on the back with radiation pulses. I could tell you an amazing story about the moon right now. If I amalgamated like concave Earth and all this, like I could tell, and I tell Casey amazing stories about the moon. But truthfully, if I told you anything that is actually truthful, is that 50 people can get on this system created by DARPA, and with some sort of photoelectric transmission can transmit an image of this celestial body that we all perceive as mankind. You know, there are ways of describing this in words that we've never used before, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like we can't use the words that have been used against us to describe things that we want to be used for us. Like
Yes, I was trying to say this to Validation Boy when he was talking about what next for the Flat Earth movement. And I was trying to, you know, the term anarcho-syndicalism. It's a made term, it has a meaning, and we can look it up. But we have to make up terminology, and unfortunately, there's a small problem with that, which is that it can seem very cult-like, but also we have to make terminology, because otherwise we'll be referring to things, like you're saying, that are already loaded. They're already loaded ideas. So when we refer to something, we have the rest of the ideas coming in. So I wanted to bring your mind to, you mentioned earlier, people like watching TV. So one of the things, when you were talking about studying and learning and observing things clearly, closely, honestly, I wanted to say, so I think one of the things that we have to learn as a species, we have to learn to do, and this refers back to the couch potato or the sponges, those who don't think that life has a point, so they don't really try, that kind of mentality. What I think would be good if people started to learn that to gain the ability to switch off the internal dialogue. There's like a fear that if you switch off the internal dialogue, I don't know, there's some aversion to it. But when you're taking in information, like when I'm listening to you, Chris, okay, I'm trying to keep my inner dialogue quiet so that I can take in what you're saying without distortion from my inner dialogue. And as a processing unit, the brain is going to absorb what you're saying much better if it's not already engaged in processing what my inner dialogue is conjuring. So I think it's really important for people to be able to, sit back, like you're saying, calm, relax. The inner dialogue is not gonna, you're not gonna lose the ability to use it. But if we don't learn to look at things without the inner dialogue, we're only going to be confirming our bias. Our inner dialogue is going to do that. And when people go home, switch the TV on, and sit there in a stupor watching CSI or whatever they're watching, they're engaged with the story, but their inner dialogue is incessant. There is no stopping the inner dialogue. And this is how you can have somebody watching TV. You speak to them, and they don't hear you. It's not because the television volume is so loud. It's because they've got the television telling them one story, and their inner dialogue is doing all kinds of thinking about the day, about friends, about the clothes the protagonists are wearing, about everything. This inner dialogue is something that is engaged with the whole fear-mongering. The fear-mongering is to cause our vibration, to block out peace, happiness, thoughts of progression, of abundance.
If the system is hacked, it could be that way. Listen, they could be pulsating 440 frequency waves out of antennas across the world like the signal, and they live. And it could be affecting us negatively. Some can see through it, some can't. Sure. What I'm trying to say is that the fact that we can sit here and assess this is simply evidence of the fact that we can move past it. So what I'm saying is that while I've been practiced enough, like I said earlier, is I've worked with many people, I've run teams before, I've done all sorts of stuff like this. I'm practiced at dealing with people and talking to people. So I'm watching you and I'm understanding everything you're saying. I'm passionate about the talk. I realize that I have to keep the passion up. I realize that what I sound like, I'm listening to myself on 10 different wavelengths. I'm also thinking, man, I'm not paying attention to the chat room as much. I'm also thinking about the stream later. Once you get practiced at multidimensional thinking, you start...
Sorry, Chris. I'd completely forgotten there was a chat. You just reminded me. I'm so sorry. If anybody...
You know what I mean? So, and I keep thinking, I keep looking at the chat room, and I keep thinking, I know, but this is one of those things that people really like. And Nathan, man, I want to really jump back to the wave, but I love this. This is something that's very rarely discussed, which is the obvious.
And well, that's it. I've kept quiet because there's been no need for me to interject. I mean, I'm totally captivated listening to you two talk.
All right, so this obvious thing, and I'll give you a perfect example of the obvious. So, and I don't know, maybe Mark will hear this, but this is a perfect example. Mark Sargent talks about these military guys who come in and vindicate the flat Earth movement. And in my mind, the first question that comes into mind, and he's like, why would they do that if it weren't flat? And I'm like, man, but the obvious question is, of course they would do that. It's like, why would they do that? Not, they would only do that if. It's why would they do that at all? And that question just never comes up. It just never has. It's become, and I'm reading not what I think, because I no longer participate in that, because I have a lot of work to do, and I realize that the more I do my work, the more people enjoy it. So I've started to phase out of watching every single video. I just do it to catch up so that when people talk to me, I know what's going on. But when I look at it from a very outside perspective, now that I'm outside of really judging anything, there are obvious questions that jump into everyone's minds. And if you avoid that, eventually what happens is people start feeling really frustrated. And that's why we're frustrated with Neil deGrasse and NASA, is because they just never go to the second or third question. Like the obvious question to that Elvis impersonator at NASA would be, why don't you know the mechanics of the camera? Why don't you know how many megapixels? Neil Armstrong, the MIT video of the guy running the computer on Apollo, seemed like the guy really knew how to run that freaking system. That's a complicated ass fucking system, right? Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin don't seem like two people who would know how to run a complex operational system like that, especially in the late 60s. And never remember a thing about running it, or never mention a crater on the moon by name. Those are things.
This flat out before you go any further. Do you think NASA have actually sent men to the moon?
I don't know anymore.
You don't know?
I don't know. I used to say 100% no, but I don't know. I can't tell. Because looking at
a simple question about the moon itself. I mean, what would you say is the moon's trajectory?
What I'm really studying now every single day is orbital mechanics. And if you study orbital mechanics and you mix it up with electromagnetism, centripetal and centrifugal divergent convergent forces, you'll see that there is a way with quantum locking to create what it is falling around a sphere. And if you magnetize and polarize and energize the ionosphere in a certain way, and you create a light enough craft that creates a polarity generation between this, you can create what is considered orbit. And so now that I've seen this, it makes me question whether satellites are real. I know the prevailing theme, okay, the pictures don't match up, there are no, and that pisses me off, sure. There are no pictures of satellites that really convince me that there are satellites. But at the same time, these orbital mechanics work in a very simple way to me now, and after I've looked into it, I just didn't know how they worked. And now that I know how they work, I think, wow, well, maybe. So I can't answer that. I'll be flat out, I have no idea. What I do know is that I don't see things flying around the moon. I don't see things on the moon. But does that mean there aren't any things? I don't have the gear to make that 100% assessment. So it's like almost, I don't want to say it's pointless to answer that or to explain, but it's good to tell you this way because I'm as close as I can possibly be to knowing the answer, and I have no concept. I have no idea what it really is.
It might be that there's a lot of I don't knows to the questions I've got then. I mean, do you
No, that's
think
cool. That's cool. I'll tell you. What?
Would you this is a really difficult question again, it's probably going to get an I don't know, but do you think space is a vacuum?
I don't think, okay, so from studying it, vacuum doesn't seem to exist perfectly as a vacuum, right? And the idea of vacuum is that it's basically very little density as we know it, and which means electromagnetic forces function in a different way. Speed of light could be different, heat induction could be different, the fundamental laws of thermodynamics could be totally different in what's perceived as the vacuum of space. If you look at vacuum of space as dark matter, you can think of it as counter space in magnetism, and the voidance of space is what creates matter. You know, basically loss of inertia, essentially counter space creates all the points of light of the intersecting patterns of these movements of electromagnet. I mean, we're light, right? We're light. That's
Yes.
the idea. We're light, and so whatever light is traversing geometry, and at some points the geometry is heavy enough for us to perceive as third density reality, but the rest of it is basically a soup of a very organized plasma, water, light system. So what the moon is, what the sun is, these are all based on these fundamental laws. And it's nicer to think about it that way. Like, I don't know what the moon is particularly. It could be like a hollowed out body. It could be, you know, if you say, okay, let's talk about the fundamental understanding. The moon is apparently a body that is formed. Spherical bodies are formed in space or in vacuum or in these types of environments because...
So sorry to interrupt you, Chris.
Sure.
Before you go on, maybe you could just explain, you just said something quite specific, which is it's spherical. Maybe you could explain to the people watching what libration is and how that would suggest that it is spherical.
Right. So libration is essentially the rocking of the moon as it goes around an ecliptic path around the Earth. Whether or not the sun is at the center of the galaxy or the Earth is, the moon is either going around us or we're going around the moon, or some crazy shit is happening, but that looks like that. But if you're looking at it that the moon goes around us in these arcs, in these elliptical arcs, so, you know, of course, like an elliptical orbit is basically, if you split it in half, it's a short arc and it's a long arc, right? And when you're going up like a ramp, there's the ease in and the ease out effect, where you hit the top of the roller coaster, right, and it slows down, and at the very top it's slow till a very standstill, and then when you go down the roller coaster, it speeds up. Those are these arcs that the moon and the sun take, I believe. So there's the slowdown on the ellipse, the elliptical path of the moon. So libration is essentially as the moon goes around at a certain type of speed, and the way we witness it is that it tilts ever so slightly as it goes around this ellipse. And yeah.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's regarding the sun. This is something I used to scratch my head over when I was living on a globe. So the sun is shooting its way in space, and I used to wonder whether the sun was being propelled, not just from an inertial point, you know, an initial point that just shot it round and it's now in a groove from the waves from the galaxy, and, you know, perpetually in motion because the spin of the center of the galaxy is causing these waves, or whether it was propelled by some other mechanism because if we take the sun to be a fiery ball of whatever type of fire, nuclear, whatever, the lack of trail of the sun as it spins its way around the galaxy, the lack of trail, like you'd expect on a comet, given its speed, it used to say to me, well, the lack of tail must be because its energy is being pushed from behind, otherwise we'd have a trail. And I'm thinking, I used to think, so what the heck is this energy? Is the spin of the galaxy causing a grid-like energy which pushes the back of the sun as well as the front of the sun?
We're leaving out the black hole at the center of our galaxy.
Yeah, that's
the counter space. So yeah, so the cause of the spin it's the spin and the counter spin, right?
Yes.
Right.
So as the sun is spinning, caught in the wake of the spin of the force of the spin from the black hole,
right?
The trail, the sun is made of fire. It's speeding its way through space, almost half the speed of light. I think it is something ridiculously fast. There isn't a trail. It's not leaving a trail behind it, like a comet. A comet has a trail.
So let's discuss that a little bit more in depth. I think because the understanding of speed and speed of light and astronomical units is fundamentally not only missing data, it's explained at a kindergarten level usually. Yes. And I don't think I can do a much better, but I can try and put it into more, into a better way of visualizing it, I think.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that that potentially we're in an enclosed universe. I know they say it's infinite and expanding, but we could be in a cell, like a cellular universe, right? Cellular cosmogony makes a lot of sense to me. The Earth at the center, or maybe the Sun at the center, somehow we're the third planet out. But it could be that the Earth is the largest object. It could be that the Earth is the same size as the Sun and the Moon, and it's this trinity concept where these three energetic systems work dynamically at the center of a core model, right? The reason what happens is these. Let me try and explain this. Man, it's a little more difficult than I thought.
I have an idea. I have an idea, Chris. If that's okay. We're getting very into the theory of astronomy. We can bring it back down to Earth, to humans, because we know that we're electromagnetic energies. We can talk from that level, and I think it will be more interesting for people because most people are humans, aren't they?
Well, yeah, okay, great. So this is a good way to put it. Let's say we're all electromagnetic, right? And we're all able to see this, and we're interconnected in some way. The idea of take back space, right, and the idea of the lunar wave, and the idea of filming the moon, and the idea of flat Earth, this is all people taking part in the giant game of life, in the stage, right? Regardless of whether you think it's a conspiracy or not, you're still taking part. If you don't get out of bed, you might not be taking part, but in a way, you're still taking part. But once you're taking part, that's where I'm saying, like, once we've shown up to this game, there's just no way we can say, oh, no, this game is not being played.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Oh, wow, that's a really good way of putting it.
Just can't. That's why I went back to NASA and I was like, okay, I'm going to start discerning photo by photo, video by video. Does this eclipse look fake in CGI? Yes. Does this photo of the moon look fake? I don't know. Does this photo of Jupiter look fake? I'm not sure. Could that have been taken from Earth? I took a picture of ISS. I don't know. Is that a real thing? Could there be people? Maybe. Until I see a person pop out, I'm not going to say there is or there isn't. But I'm not going to say, look, they're in front of a computer CGI screen 100%. That's why they put George Bush there and that. I can't say that. Plus, these people are disgusting. Can't we just say it? These people are annoying to look at. I don't want to look at thin-lipped George Bush anymore. I don't want to look at these people anymore.
It's gross. Did you see?
I don't care about these people. They don't care about us, and I don't care if they're on a green screen. I care about waking up in the morning, looking up, and being like, I understand what rain is. I understand why clouds move the way they do.
So this is blue. This is
simple shit.
I was just going to say, this is what a lot of the flat earther people are coming back to, that nature has the answers. In fact, if there are any answers, unless we're going to accept personal testimony from a third party, it's nature that has the answers to,
here's a good one.
what we're
Good one.
doing.
Let me jump in just before I forget this.
Yeah.
I know I'll forget it again. Because this whole idea of synthesis and artificiality, and these are trigger words. We got to really recognize this because they are. Once you say things are artificial, fake, or all of a sudden there's, without deeper understanding, it's labeled that. And so what I'm trying to say is we need to really be more discerning with the words we use. If it's possible, then it's possible. If it's totally fraudulent, proven by 10 experiments, then it is a fraud. You know,
Yes,
let's just discern. Why do we have to just throw everything out because it's just annoying?
But also we're facing people, the politicians, and their use of language. You can point out to somebody that something is impossible, and they can just say, no, it isn't. Unless it's something actually physical, you know, there seems to be a huge disjunction between reality and people's acceptance of what things are what. And it's just bizarre.
I mean, you want to identify with people that you like. You want to identify with music that you like. And for me, I'll explain the patterning that I've noticed in my lifetime. At some point or another, culture does catch up to what is cool. They'll eat up Kanye, and eventually they'll go back to the 60s. They'll eat up Beyonce, and then they'll eventually go back to the 70s. And I know that a lot of people are like 60s, 70s music is all Illuminati shit, but it's not. Not all of it is like that. Some people played for the simple pleasure of playing, and you could feel what these people were resonating. You could feel what these weird industrial bands were putting out, and a lot of them felt like we do today. And if you dismiss that as an Illuminati shill move and never listen to classic rock because they made devil horns, you're missing out, man. Like, seriously, this is what participating in life is all about, is not saying, you know, I won't be part of this. I just won't be because blah. And that's silly, because the more that you're part of it, the more you can actually make a much more measured judgment and be like, okay, you're playing this chess game. Not only am I going to get good at this chess game, I'm going to beat you at the chess game, and then I'm going to pull out another board game that you don't know about. But without going through those, you're not going to ever get anywhere. There's no we're winning with flat earth. There's no it's just not happening in that way. I promise. I was here, man. I did 9/11. Not did 9/11. Wow, that's terrible.
It was you.
It was all me. No, I watched it in New York while it happened, and I completely didn't believe it. And then 2003, I watched the election get stolen again. And then I watched 2007 when they rigged every single time. Everyone's like, we're going to tell them, and we're going to march, and we're going to blah, and it never fucking happens. And I'll tell you exactly why it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because of this whole idea that you can simply just, okay, that's it, without doing the studying. It's just like when, you know, acing a final without ever studying the class. Like, it's ridiculous. It can't be done.
Did either of you see the footage from Beijing airport on the last Bush election? It was on the television news, so it's just, you know, a little bit of propaganda, but it was showing the results of the elections and how the Chinese were studying and looking, because they're considering possibly, you know, having democracy, and they're looking, and it was when the counting was going all wrong, you know, with Dole.
Right. And this is okay.
And the Chinese are looking at the screen, going, "Okay, so now what the hell happens?" You know.
Okay, let's break down some of the moon stuff that pisses me off. The obvious questions about the moon. Okay, so the moon thing first started off, oh my God, the flag wasn't waving. Oh my God, blah blah blah, like basic stuff. And then the pushback was like, no, it was an aluminum flag. No, they did this and this and this. And then now there's this whole other realm. No, but it was the jetpacks, and it was vacuum, and it was during a major solar time. And it could have fried their brains out, and blah, and then it comes back at us, and it's like, no, we developed that technology. No, do you understand how that goes nowhere? It goes absolutely fucking nowhere. Maybe they never went. Maybe they went. But does it really matter if I ever know that they lied to me and stole 89 billion? It doesn't matter. It used to piss me off so fucking much, but it doesn't anymore. And I'll tell you why it doesn't. Because it doesn't matter that they did that. It matters that we do what we want.
Yes,
now,
so this is what I was referring to.
Now matters. The past is done.
Yeah, it's now, and it's reality, the physical sense. Nature is the clearest indicator of a good avenue. You know, you
Right,
can
right.
look at how
Plastics. There
things
we go.
happen.
Synthesis and artificiality, right? People are like, "Oh
Yeah,
my God, plastic," and I'm all about that. Like, fuck plastic, right? But
yeah.
it's not against nature. Okay,
If
can we
they,
be
if
discerning? Because plastics come from nature, so it's not synthetic. It's synthesized, but it's not synthetic it's not against Earth because it was created out of Earth elements. So
yeah,
that's it. It's you have to like it takes away the fear aspect of it, is what I'm saying.
yeah. Have you seen anything of the Venus project?
Yeah, building the old French guy. No, Jacques. Yeah, I know who you're
Fresco.
talking about.
Jack,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Jack Fresco. So he's talking about the possibility of developing plastics that don't is it outgas? You know, when they release fumes,
Hmm.
um, creating plastics that don't pollute the atmosphere and using those for houses because you know they're non biodegradable. So some uses of plastics, absolutely, absolutely, there's no problem with them. Other uses, it's like, yeah, you can get a headache from this, and you don't know that it's from that.
You know why
But
guys like that started to turn me off? Like, for example, Drunvalo Melchizedek or David Wilcock or David Sedaris or like these guys who do these projects,
yeah,
because they're assuming that we need this. We
yeah,
don't need housing. What we need is not monopolization. We need anti-monopolization laws, like first and foremost. You know what I mean? We need people like Ted Turner not to be able to buy 73 trillion acres or whatever and stop people from living there. Whatever houses they decide to build and whatever materials doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we take back the land.
what do you think is going to happen in the future when Ted Turner is 100 years dead? Do you think?
I think these guys just, okay, think about it like this. Let's say you came across the manual to this game.
Yeah,
And you're like, should I share the manual with the guys playing or should I just keep the manual? Ted Turner and those guys have the manual and we don't. That's all
yeah,
that it's not more evil than that. It's just some bullies. It's just bullies and greedy
yes,
bullies.
but I
And
think
you have to be very smart to beat a bully. This is what every movie is about. Every superhero movie at the end of it is not about brute force, right? It's about cunning and craft. It's about
yes, but
wiliness. You never win with brute force.
you said it right at the beginning. Love. Okay, so they have the rules to the games. They've got the cheat codes for the games and the external world. I
Right.
think we have, without cheat codes, the rules and the ability for the internal world. Now, we have no idea what their internal world is, but Nathan and I have discussed how some of them embellish, they weave a story to justify their existence and their abuse of others to make it
Exactly.
okay.
I
So,
agree with that 100%. It's this tale of self-loathe that is projected by them, by a small group of people on the masses because of the guilt of stealing the manual. It
yes, and it
seems
goes.
like a very simple thing. It really feels like a massive guilt trip that it's very familial and inbred. I feel.
Yes, and it goes back to what you were saying about the music. The music of the past and the illusion that the Illuminati were already operating, controlling everything. It's like, nah, these are illusions. These are illusions. We know that there are musicians. You don't fake a feeling that you get from a musician or from a piece of music or from a track and the knock-on thoughts
No,
that
you
they're
can't.
going
You
to have.
can't. I mean, look at. I mean, this is something I'll tout because I've spent my whole life getting good at playing guitar, and so
Yeah.
I can sit at 4 in the morning and not think about it and play for people, and they can feel what I'm feeling completely honestly. There's no filter there. In fact, it's even more appealing than the moon because there's a telescope and a camera between them and and the moon.
Yeah.
There's almost less vibrational resistance between me and the audience playing something that I've invested solely not to make money. Like not 20 years ago, but like, I don't know, 8 years ago now when I stopped playing in New York, I quit my band that was really going off, and they ended up opening for Aerosmith at one point after I left. But we rocked it out in New York, and after that I was like, man, this is not about money. People don't care about this. People care, they care about how you look, they care about what the drink they're having that night is. You'll get off the stage and they'll be like, great show, mate, awesome. Next day they'll forget all about you. And I realized I don't want to play music for money anymore. And the day I did that, I got good at playing music, at songwriting. For real, my songwriting got just a lot better. Not my guitar playing, you know, is technically better.
Isn't that the story with...
comes from the heart now, because I don't give a shit what people think what I'm writing. I don't care if my voice cracks. I don't give a shit anymore, and people relate to that so much more than the shit that's polished and auto-tuned, because they know that I don't have fear. And in a way, I'm a very fearful person, but in that way, in the ways that I've been able to hone my skills, and that's why I'm saying when I encourage people to really research and study, because what it does, it's not about studying, it's not about information, it's simply about confidence. It's only confidence. That's the fear. That's the segue back to your answer. The reason people don't act is because of confidence, and they think confidence is something that you can just acquire by nailing a chick, or by doing drugs, or by mocking somebody gay, or whatever does it for you to make you feel big. That's where I feel it's not. I no longer look down upon those people. I just feel sorry for the fact that they haven't realized that it's a total waste of their energy. And if they just, instead of mocking somebody or making fun of somebody, they use that energy to help themselves.
Yeah, it's
if they can help themselves, help that other person. But don't mock somebody, because you're so far removed from where we can be.
Yeah. So with the confidence, it's from what I've gained, what I've learned about confidence is that it's something that you practice, and as you practice, you get better, and that's basically it. It's very, from my point of view, it's really simple. It really is. You just practice it. At first you feel awkward, and like you're saying, confidence, you can come to an absolutely irrefutable conclusion that turns out to be false, but you believed it was irrefutable, and you're convinced, and then, you know, it gets smacked down. Okay, so you accept, you know, you say, yeah, big mistake, my bad, but you carry on. You don't then consider your use of your own confidence as having been a mistake. It's like, no. You directed it.
Yeah, and listen, learning about confidence is part of recognizing that. Fail fast. Fail fast.
Yes, absolutely. You know, triple your rate of failure.
Fail fast. You know, take that left in the road, and realize that you're going to have a chance to take the right, and you're going to have a chance to take the left like 10,000 more times if you choose.
Yes, if we look at what the media is doing to the population of the Earth, because there's media in every single country, except maybe perhaps like the Bhutan or somewhere like that.
Quick one, you'll like this.
Yeah.
Media.
Yes.
I am God. I mean, this is basically, media is like my God, or I am God. I mean, really every powerful monosyllabic, polysyllabic code word ends up with yo, or God, or Dio, or Han, or Ankh, or I am, or Yam, or Om. The fundamental God word, or the I word. Anyway. Yes,
it's always, we are critically important, you must consider us gravely. Yes, that's the thing. But what I was getting at is, if we look at what the media does to us, not to people like us who don't actually engage with it very much, but people who do engage with it, it completely undermines their sense of security, their confidence, which is what we're talking about. It undermines their confidence in their leaders, their confidence in their community, their confidence in life, in their own happiness, in the happiness of their loved ones. It undermines everything.
Here's a great one for people. Con man, confidence man.
Yeah.
Why is he a confidence man? Because he knows shit you don't. Not because he's smarter than you. He just knows the game that's going on and you don't, so he can con you. But he's not better.
Yes, and the way the con man...
You don't need to be afraid of these people. You need to just realize that the game is going on without you. And if you choose to disengage at this point, you're going to lose, because the system is really based on this game, unfortunately. That's the only thing I can say. It seems like an Agent Smith system. It seems like we're in a way, potentially, not that it's always been this way, but potentially it does shift 40-60 evil good. Maybe we're at a crux of it. Maybe we're at the analemma point of that. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure we are. We're discussing things like confidence man that you just brought up. The confidence man doesn't work well because he's confident. The reason he works well is that he knows how to inculcate in you a sense of confidence in him and whatever plan he's bringing. So he's good at bolstering your confidence, and because it's refreshing, you embrace this confidence, and then you end up, losing out.
Right, but would you be friends with that guy? The thing is, what happens is at first you're friends, but after a while, once the con is revealed, the essence is there. And if you don't like, this is something actually Nathan mentioned about love and about relationships, you tend to watch what makes you feel good. This is what people refer to as a guilty pleasure, which they won't admit to. They'll look at a combination of things. They'll hear the tonality of your voice. They'll hear or look at your eyes or your facial movements. They'll look at your content. They'll look at your art. They'll make an amalgamated formation. This is what we do as humans of one another. And so I'm saying, if you're not aware of not just that happens, but what that actually implicates in terms of how people accept and receive you and your information, then you're not doing it correctly. And that's why I'm saying there has to be this awareness of not only self, but awareness of self-watching self. You have to have that third, fourth, fifth multidimensional thinking in order to really approach this. I'm really encouraging it because I got into flat earth. I understand exactly what the trigger points are. And it's not that it's wrong or right. It's that it doesn't matter if it's wrong or right. It's that if you're doing something that hasn't been done before, you're doing something new. Like you're doing what you want to be doing. Like right now, we are doing what we want to be doing. Yes, we're on a DARPA network, but are they actually shutting us down? No. When people tell me, oh, they're going to shut us down if we put this content up, I'm like, show me that video. Go to another IP address, film them taking down your video for speaking the truth, show me that, and then I'll believe that happens. But until that happens, I don't believe you can hack people. I don't believe people. I don't think any of this is actually happening. This is, in a way, what we want to happen because it's easier than actually studying. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's really studying Kepler's third law is boring as fuck.
I'm sure it was on Patricia's show a couple of nights ago. She read out an email that basically said, you don't need to have people infiltrating movements or shills. All you need is the idea of shills, and it'll propagate by itself.
Dude, the word cult, how many videos have been made about that word? I mean, I don't even want to talk about it because think about, even me talking about it makes people recompile and re-assimilate all the videos they saw. It's totally pointless. Totally. Who cares if it's a cult or not a cult? These are words that were not meant to be used in this way. They're just not. Like if you talk to me all day long, I would never use the word cult. I just wouldn't use these words.
It's all about undermining confidence. That's why those words are used.
Ostracizing people, isolationism. Literally, if anyone's had a bad relationship, and I'm sure everyone's had a bad relationship, at some point your partner or even you will find yourself guilty of basically throwing what you're guilty of at that person and saying they're guilty of it.
Yeah.
At some point or another, that's happened to every single one of us, and if you know that can happen, then you know what you're doing.
Not me. Not me. No, I'm perfect.
That's what I'm saying. Deep down, everybody knows what they've done. Everybody knows.
Sometimes I imagine ex-girlfriends watching this and thinking, you are such a twat. You're giving such a false illusion of yourself.
Right, but think about it. So imagine when I've cursed at I bike around a lot and I curse at people who drive really crazy around bikers. And it's a trigger emotion for me. I'm like, what are you thinking, man? But do I know that person behind the wheel? Do I know what they're going through? Do I know what emergency they may be in? When I'm sitting there sending them terrible energy for no fucking reason.
Yeah,
and I want to stop that. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of it. I'm saying that we have to undo this Pavlovian mechanism of being hateful, because this is what breeds more hate. I mean, if you want to stop the ripple of hate, you stop hating by starting to love.
Yeah, well, this is the way I got to because I am at that point. I know, and Nathan will probably grit his teeth at this. I'm a really mellow driver. The reason I'm a mellow driver is that I used to get, I've had racy cars, I was young, I used to race people and stuff, but the getting cut up, being forced into a lane you don't want to be in, just all these kind of things. and the anger that you feel. At one point I thought, you know what, I'm going to change that myself. I'm going to change the anger I feel. I'm going to imagine that the person that's just done that is either lost, distracted, unwell, or really under stress. They might have just heard some terrible news and they're trying to get somewhere. It might be completely false, but the truth is they are stressed. Nobody drives like that.
Okay, and here's the secondary thought. Once you get there and you've developed an approach to tackle your own programming, right, you have to realize that you also have to forgive yourself for screwing up.
Oh, do you know what?
Because people miss that. We don't know how to be loved, so we use this misappropriated emotion to judge ourselves for being hateful. So we say, fuck it, and we keep being hateful instead of saying, no, it's okay because I'm learning how to be I'm teaching myself how to be unprogrammed, and I'm gonna fuck up on the way there.
Yeah, do you know, I used to work with people with mental health problems, and I pondered about various different things. Somebody had a problem with forgiveness. They couldn't forgive the person they wanted to forgive. They really wanted to forgive somebody, but they couldn't, and they couldn't understand why they couldn't forgive them. And I explained to him. I mean, and this was on the fly, you know, I've been thinking about it myself. I said, look, forgiveness is like a coin, okay? It has two sides. On one side is the person you want to forgive. On the other side is your self. Because once you forgive the other person, you have to immediately forgive yourself for not having done that earlier, because you've been damaging yourself by not forgiving them. And you know what? Yeah. I left working for this company, but I happened to bump into him sometime later, and he looked much better. And yeah, it worked. He told me he managed it. So yeah.
Listen, now that being said, I have and the flip side of that coin is basically that there are instances where you have to make a choice. Mm. These are actually much harder choices than things that we face in the truth movement. Like with family, for example, like choosing to engage with family or not for efficiency in your own life, emotional efficiency, not like, because a lot of people are paralyzed by their families or by their relationships, and they tend to stick in it because they are too fearful to be alone. Because loneliness means that you have to do things and you have to face yourself. And the thing is, I think the whole phrase "face oneself" is terrifying. That phrase, it's a minor phrase. The syllables like make you feel a certain way. When you tell somebody, go think about your actions, it makes people feel bad. But if you tell people, listen, let's go contemplate in a field and brainstorm, people are like, oh, brainstorm, field. You know, you think you can present things using our coded malicious etymology and flip it into ways that makes more sense to people, as long as you're aware of what's going on with that motion, you know? So if you don't want to be hateful to another driver, and you are, if you forgive yourself right afterwards and say, you know what, I'm learning. My intentions are good here. I really want to not be angry at those drivers, but I probably will be 1,000 times more until I'm cured of this. If I feel, if your goal is to be cured of this, if you're somebody who likes being hateful to drivers, then that's your goal. You know, then be more hateful.
The only problem is, though, Chris, it's promoted. The propaganda promotes our own self-loathing, and this is continuous.
Well, if you avoid it, okay, that's what I'm saying. Take back space. We're on a network made by DARPA. We're talking on a show right now. If you said, hey guys, we're not going to mention the word cult today, we're just not going to do it. And you really, like, I'm telling my family right now, and I know that they'll probably never listen to the show, so I'm going to tell you flat out. I talk more about my mother to my siblings than I actually talk to my mother. And I realize I'm spending so much time talking about roundabout things that make no sense, that I should just address with her or not address at all.
Do you know, sorry.
So it's not, so I've just, quickly, I'll just finish. So I've had to make an efficient choice to say, well, at some point I will address this, and right now I don't want to. So you have to make difficult choices, but it doesn't mean you can't make them.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's like a split in the truth movement where a lot of people think the flat earth is a psyop. And what you're talking about, taking back space, is making me think, do you know what? Within the flat earth, there's this split. I don't know if you're aware of it. There seems to be like one branch, and that does a lot of abusing, and another branch that receives the abuse and doesn't abuse back. And it would be great if the two were together, if they weren't enemies. And I'm thinking, you know, they're taking back space. If the whole of the truth community embraces each other, you've got the anti-vaccination people. I've loved them to bits, you know. You've got the 9/11 truthers who still, you know, who are still, you know, looking to hold people's feet to the fire. If we all take back our own space, and you know, we might have disagreements, but if we show the respect to each other, we are a much stronger force for good, not for changing the system, not for destabilizing governments, not for any of that. You know, they have the weapons and they have the know-how. I mean, a force for good, you know, to help bring others a sense of confidence, a sense of happiness about their lives. Now, going back to the
it's a great point, but you have to ask why you want to do that. I think it's important to know, like, it's not just to do it, right? Like, if you want to help people,
yeah,
like, what are you do? Like, what is it that you're helping them with, like, in actuality? Because I think that's those questions at NASA, right? The reporters at the press briefings at the White House, right? They never ask the question that I want, and the question is, like, what is the actionable thing that I should do when I hang up? Like, what should I do when I hang up the phone line or turn off the stream? What should I actually physically put myself in the mindset and do? And most people don't have that answer, no matter what they do. And I'm sorry to say, on a lot of flat earth channels, and even sometimes on mine, where I'm like, just go make videos, it's a little bit more complex than that. Like, if that's why I've started to get more complex about it, because I took the time to gauge people's reaction to it, and at some point you really just have to get organized. And so what you're saying is true. If people are keen on debunking 9/11, then get all your 9/11 people together and work it out.
Yes.
And get all your science people and work it out. And the thing is, it's not that we're on different sides of it. It's that people want to be right about their methods. It really has nothing to do with the goal, which is why I keep asking, like, what do you want it to be flat for? Why do you want it to be a globe? Why do you want it to be an inverted sphere? Like, what would it do for you at the end of the day when you woke up and reassimilated that you had to go to the bathroom, have a cup of coffee, and get your work done? What does it fucking matter what shape it is? What matters is that the media has a chokehold on content. That's what actually matters. And how to break that is to break that. Just simply physically reverse that chokehold on content, and that then only then can we assess what we might do about a much more massive, organized, malicious. I mean, think about it, guys. Let me, if you don't mind, I just want to finish this thought. If you think it's this bad, if you think it's this sinister, and they can fake the ISS, and they've controlled Antarctica, and they have multiple treaties, and everybody's in on it, right? You got to get super duper fucking organized. You're not going to just win like willy-nilly, just go around and tell them they're wrong. You got to really get good about your stuff. So what I'm saying is, first steps first. Get the content back. Get the discussion back to a place that seems logical.
So much admiration for what you're doing, because just by the title itself, Take Back Space, is so very apt. You know, right? Why bother going to the extent of debunking NASA and pulling their stuff to pieces when we can take ownership of the content?
Yeah, and just from the get-go say this is straight-up content, as opposed to saying, let's check this content that's fourth, fifth party deep, test it against other content that's even more fifth party deep and unfocused, and see if we can make an assessment. And I'm like, no fucking way can you make an assessment. Basically, you have to start over, get the real content yourself, assess it with a critical eye, which is what I'm saying. I can't see the rover because we don't have 8K. We don't have a 15-inch scope at our disposal. It's not because it's not there. And when I see those track marks, or don't see them with the proper technique, I'll tell people there are no fucking track marks 100%.
Oh, that's not strictly true, Chris. I contacted an observatory in Goonhilly, Cornwall, and asked them about seeing the lunar rover, and they essentially wrote back and said that even if you had Hubble pointing at the moon, it's so minuscule that you would never.
Well, that's actually great to talk about, because that's what I've really studied, and that's a total mistruth. That's one of those things that I can tell you.
Is that so? I mean, that's what Goonhilly told me.
I'm telling you that they can do it. I'm telling you that with a certain type of equipment, I hate to say I believe things, but I'm looking at laws of propagation, right? In terms of technology. And if you just look at and I say it all the time on my stream, look at this budget-ass scope. Multiply it, just expound it 2030, not 100, just 2030 expound it, and you've got something that'll blow your mind apart. Like, I mean, man, last night, even. Every time we do Moon TV, I'm even staggered sometimes at the quality and how close we are. Like, even now, after seeing it so many fucking times, Saturn is just like, whoa,
Me too.
watch.
I mean, I must admit,
Watch
Chris,
when
when I
we're there.
watch your stream, I am in absolute awe of the stuff you produce, and it's slightly emasculating when my wife says, "Wow, that's so much better than what you produce."
Oh, man. We're all doing...
Chris,
Yeah.
I have a question about Saturn. I was talking about this with Nathan earlier. Have you ever seen Saturn where you have the bottom visible, you have the rings? Have you ever seen the top also visible? Has it ever been inclined in such a way that you've seen the bottom, the rings, and the top?
Man, you know, I could answer that, but I'd say let's just wait. I'm going to get 4K this weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a 9.5-inch scope sooner, you know, I hope a month or two. And then let's look at it properly. Let's get some, like, the way we're seeing it is just not, it's not good enough. It just really isn't good enough. And the pictures that we see from NASA are so good that I can't even make an assessment, because I'm like, I have to buy into it because it's staggering. You know, it's like...
That was going to be one of the questions I asked, actually, Chris. I mean, you said that you don't want to chuck the baby out with the bathwater, but do you think NASA have embellished all of their images? I mean, what's your take on their stuff? It doesn't look anything like what you or I see through a scope.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Where I first came into Flat Earth, I was like total fucking fraud. But I'm sorry, I'm cursing a lot today. But essentially, when you go back into it and you look at every video and every picture and you take the time, you'll realize that it would be way more costly, impossible to find the designers or CGI people to create that much content that regularly with people who don't care about us. It's way easier to just inject an idea, use real-world, you know, mechanical effects to produce an illusion than it is to, like, create full, like, every single day, 24 hours, cloud movements with particle effects rendered on high-end rendering farms. Now, could it be done? Yeah, sure, it can be fucking done. But is it done on a budgetary scale with a creative director, a developer, a project manager, people uploading it, people doing Q&A on it? Man, there are parts of this idea that it's fake and CG that are not being taken into effect because people are just not CG artists and not been part of a development team or a creative team. It's very hard to produce this stuff in a way that makes like 100 discerning people not be able to debunk it in a heartbeat. Like,
Yeah.
I look at that plane reversing footage, you know, the one that just came out, plane stops in midair, and it took me like 5 seconds and I debunked it because I've played with parallax now, I've played with cameras, I've done the same effect by accident, and I immediately was able to, like, and a year ago I would have looked at it and been like, wait, what? Is that a holographic plane? Is that the same thing they use on 9/11? Oh my God, you know, and I would have taken it there and not had an answer for it. Now I look at it, I'm like, man, if there were really a plane stopping in midair, you'd have all the passengers tweet about it. You'd have people on the ground film it from a standstill. Like, the evidence would be there. Things that are there, there's evidence for. Things that aren't there, there's very little evidence for, which is also why I'm not completely against when flat earthers are like, space has been misrepresented. Yes, it's definitely been misrepresented. But can you go through all the NASA photos and 100% as a person tell me that they're all fake? You can't. I don't think anyone can. I can't.
You said, yeah, you can see if it's there. It's like, and you can't if it's not. So when Nathan phones an observatory in the UK and asks them, and they say no, maybe the reason they're saying no is that the Mars rover isn't there, and they can't show you, and the observatory is owned by the Vatican in the first place.
Okay,
So,
let me sound like a little bit of a dick here. So
yeah.
Let's rephrase that whole sentence, erase that, and say Nathan phoned these guys. They didn't give him the response that he was looking for. So that led to the belief that they might be hiding something. That's one way. That's one way to look at it. But also we could say, screw them. Either let's make a petition to spend 40 people there to use the scope ourselves, or take it with a grain of salt, because it's a grain of salt thing. They might have their reasons.
Do it ourselves like you are.
Yeah, they might, or like we are. I mean, I'm not Take Back Space by myself. I'm, you know, KC helps me out when she can. I've had some people who literally sit around for 8 hours throughout whatever stream I'm doing and just sit there. Just because we're watching together, it's like we're almost. And I'll give you guys. I mean, I'll spill the beans on what I'm thinking is actually a way forward. And I don't think anyone's really thought of this. This is the, okay, what about an online protest? What if you get 1 million people protesting one thing online from their couch?
Give me an example.
There's no example. It's never been done before.
No, I mean, I think Nathan.
Well, what I mean, let's say Moon TV, let's say, or whatever, Revolution TV. You get 5,000-10,000 people on the chat room of single mind, of a single question, and then you start tweeting. You create an online movement. You basically take the protest you take violence out of the protest, and you take protest out of the streets. And you bring it into a medium of slacktivism, which most people are lazy and a little apathetic, and that's not a bad thing, but that's where we are in this flux wave. I mean, listen, I'm an extremely dedicated, hardworking person, and I feel like I'm lazy. Because somewhere deep down, our vibration wants us to do something. There's a purpose. There's a greater vibration that we're trying to sense and trying to align ourselves with. And I think that's where it's at. I think like we just have to think more creatively. So if those guys upset you with the telescope, just like when I called out Brian Cox and he sent to me like a GIF from the LRO, I'm like, man, these are my tax dollars. I should be able to see the Apollo missions from whatever telescope you have to do it with. Just show us the frickin' photo. But I'll tell you, this is where the fact that they need to create a gray area makes it a waste of my time. Do you get what I mean? I don't want to find out why it's a gray area. The fact that they need to make it a gray area makes it completely an avoidable thing for me. So I don't even talk about it anymore. Like when I say I don't talk about and watch things, I'm talking about personal time. When I engage everybody online, I try and be part of the community. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to talk about all the things that everyone's watching. But the fact of the matter is, in my own life, I know I'm going to die. I better be ready for what's next, whatever it is. If I perish and I lose all the memories, like I get formatted, then it won't matter. And
Chris, if I can just jump in, sorry. Sure. Do you know what's going to happen? You're going to die and you're going to go, oh shit, it was flat.
That's pretty fucking funny, man.
No, do you know what? I've been trying to conceptualize.
Let me just be totally honest, man.
Yeah.
Would not have a fucking problem with it.
No, I know you wouldn't.
I really wouldn't, man. I don't want to say it if I don't think I can fucking prove it. That's all.
Yeah. I heard you on Roadbusters. Sorry. I get this guy. I see where you're coming from. My point of view is slightly different. With different people.
Fine,
I've been trying to conceptualize how to paint this freaking thing. I don't want to trick. I don't want to cheat. And I'm thinking, I don't think it's representable, because to be at that height, you might not even see. Who knows what it might look like? So I don't want to.
But it's great. Let's ask the question, like, why? Okay, let's say you found out it was flat in the next 10 minutes. Article comes out, Earth is flat. What's going to change in your life? What's going to actually happen?
I won't have the animosity of those around me.
What? No, I'm not saying. Let's say let's say it becomes a known theory, because it's not going to become a prevailing theory anytime soon. Let's just be honest about it. Let's say it becomes a theory that is debatable, that becomes public and mainstream. What is that going to happen?
That's a realistic aspiration, I would say, that it actually finally becomes acceptable to debate the issue.
Okay,
once NASA's bankrupted, once NASA stops receiving funding, and
I know, but let me hold you on that. That's not going to happen. If we're being measured about it, NASA's absolutely not going to admit fault or ever come clean. It's just a law of probability. It doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen. So what's going to actually happen? Let's say it's a debated topic. What happens next? You get a call. Let's say you guys get a little bit more viewers. We get more viewers. We talk about things a little bit more. Maybe we get on a couple of radio shows. People like Pat and Mark get validated hardcore. They get much more followers. Jaron gets a lot more. I'm just calling it like it is. This is how it is online. It's a small, quantifiable amount of people. We know exactly what's going on. Everyone knows who's everyone. In fact, we're the agents watching ourselves. There's no agents watching us. We're just a bunch of smart nerds that finally found the nerdiest possible thing to be part of.
I think if that was the case, if it did become an acceptable, debatable subject,
but how would you debate it? That's what I'm saying.
Realizations that they know very little, that they've been lied to, and then we'd end up with more people like yourself actually taking ownership of it and finding out for themselves.
I know you say that, but how? Let's go back to physicality. How does that actually manifest? What I'm saying is, like, I have to go through the confidence, the psychology, the discipline, the studying, and I have to bring myself to it. I have to find the time, the technology, the money to actually manifest. It's not just simply knowing they lie and then I'm going to do something about it. I'm saying that because I agree with that. But what are those steps in between that for people that don't know what to do? They're all they're going to do are take steps. They're going to basically, I know that this might be a stretch, but the underpants gnomes from South Park, phase 1, collect underpants, phase 2, question mark, phase 3, profit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's how people look at it. You know, the question mark is a lot of work. You're not going to get to the point where you're going to have a convo with Neil deGrasse. What I'm trying to get to is to be, I mean, let's be honest. If anybody's going to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson, you want Mark or you want me to talk to them? I mean, I don't want. It's not an ego trip. It's about, can we talk about real fucking things that they're going to come at us with, and not just say, hey, I don't believe you because you're a freaking fat liar. Well, I don't think that can happen. I think you got to come at it and be extremely smart. Like smarter than anybody possible, and we might have a shot and we might lose. There's a big shot that we might not be able to get the truth out, whatever it may be.
If we're thinking, okay, the mechanisms that would be involved, will, you know, unless the media endorses it, it might as well not happen. But if the media endorses it, then the media can then manipulate.
Well, yes, they can and they can't. Let's talk about it, because
perhaps it's better if they don't get involved, because they.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. If you don't have one with the other, in other words, if you have this announcement, you know, the Earth is flat, it's on mainstream media, people won't take the steps to do the investigation. They'll just continue to be spoon-fed that.
Right, exactly. That's the exact answer that I'm looking for, because I'm saying at the end of the day, whether it's flat or not, you still actually have to love, be disciplined, work on things, get better, to be actually satisfied with yourself. It's not about telling people that it's flat. It's not about being confident. It's about actually waking up in the morning and self-learning. Fucking off yourself, you know?
Yeah, precisely. It's all about self-discovery, and you can't have that on a media press release.
It's true. I mean, listen, what I was saying about the media, to dissect that further, okay, the media is not going to touch it, right? But what does that actually mean? What it actually means is that there are offices of MSNBC and CNN. There are buildings where people work. There are editors. There's a chain of command. There are people who deal with the creative side. There are people who deal with the money side. There's the legal department. There are people at the head of MSNBC who have access to people higher up who get to write the headlines. Think about how that works. That's how we take back space, by understanding how the echo chamber works. And by simply saying, oh, they're using this methodology to get the thing out, we're not going to sit and tell them that that's what they're doing. We're going to use that methodology to get our message out.
Do you know?
Right. So what you're saying is arm ourselves with the same propaganda they use, so that we can create our own echo chamber with.
Yeah, let's not call it propaganda, but tools. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Not propaganda, really.
But I'm just teasing. I'm teasing it.
just to use something that a lot of people might already be aware of. There's an organization called the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, and feel about them as you will. I have my own sentiments towards them, but they are hugely effective, and the way they work is not just through the front. They don't work through the front door. They are. I don't want to give any more. I don't want to give away my sentiments towards them. But the point is, they're effective. Now, they have their way of being effective. We will find our way of being effective, because the point, like you were saying, how does it change? How does it change your life? What's the importance of it being flat or round? So the importance is a personal importance. It's, you know, this whole a group of people following an idea. Yes, but it's not going to be an idea that can be easily coerced, easily stopped, manipulated. It's going to be something, you know, just as effective and as the Anti-Defamation League, but different, in a very different way. We can't predict what it is because it hasn't established itself yet. But maybe it's being established right now with this kind of conversation, because this is going on right now here between the UK and the US. We don't really know what's going on in other languages. We don't know if this is it. I know it's happening in the Spanish world, but we don't know, and we don't know how things are going to turn out. But the personal, the
Right.
change that it has to the individual, let's face it, the world is made out of individuals. The change it has on the individual is important and it's profound. And once it reaches the individuals, it doesn't really matter what the media does. The media is also made of individuals, and as time goes and as generations change, the media will change, governments will change, and things will go into the past.
I'm with you on that, but what I'm trying to get at really is like how are we doing that? Because like I said, like a UX designer in a chain of command and building a website, if you don't have that guy doing that job, we won't get there. The website will be shit at the end, I promise. So what I'm trying to say is, how do we fulfill the positions? I mean, if this is the goal, like that's why I'm asking, like, what's the point of it being flat? Is like, what do you hope to gain?
I have a brilliant
bringing down, you know, like think about it. We like bring down NASA. It's a great catchphrase, right?
Yeah.
But what are you trying to do? Like the hundreds, thousands of people that'll lose their jobs. One, it's very hard to fire those people. It's very, very hard to fire those people with tenure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just simply physically in our third density reality will absolutely not be able to happen. So what can happen, and I'll finish up real quick.
Go on.
You make 2,000 fucking 4K videos, and NASA has 500, and we have more people watching. That's it. It's simple math. Simple math. There's nothing about it. People like
your catchphrase, take back space.
Man, it's so easy because you have to look at what people really like. People really like Louis C.K. And the people who don't like him don't like him for a particular reason. And if you know the reason they like him and don't like him, then you're there. Then you know how to make it happen. But if you only like him, and if people that don't like Louis C.K. are all assholes, you're nowhere, buddy.
I'm with Bill Burr. Bill Burr's already spoken about so many conspiracies in his stand-up. I think if he got a hold of the flat Earth and started tearing into it, it would be awesome. It would be absolutely brilliant. But an analogy for you when you're asking about the how, so brilliant idea, yes. You know, there would be the practical things, like you just said. That's an awesome idea. And as the technology develops and it becomes more affordable, there will be more people. And with the hive mind, there are more people with more abilities. So with the how, I'll give you an analogy. In the Middle Ages, there were castles in Spain, and the way to conduct a siege on a castle is basically by starving the people out and eventually trying to climb over the walls with various different structures. In Catalonia, where I grew up, we had a way of conducting siege on a castle, and that was to go up at night time and make a castle out of humans, make a tower. And
sounds
you might
like
have
300.
seen them. No, but have you seen the Gold Castellers?
No, I actually haven't. That sounds really intriguing. I'd love to see it.
The whole community gathers together in a square. Okay, so you've got everybody pushing in for the base to be strong. You've got the strong, sturdy guys at the bottom, and you've got rows, sometimes of 15 layers of people. And at the end, a child climbs up. They walk this tower to a balcony, and the child takes a rose. And that's it. That's a celebration. Now, in the real world, that was done exactly the same, in quiet, in silence, at night, and the child, or the lighter person, would climb to the top to get down and open the gate. Now, this was done without structures, with things that could be burned, things that took a long time to be transported. This was just people. And I'm thinking, you know, it's just going to be people doing what they're good at. And when you've got thousands of people good at using the equipment you're talking about, there you go. That's that avenue covered. There's going to be avenues for people who direct their comments towards the more spiritual aspects of life. You know, Eckhart Tolle type people. There's going to be people like that too. There's going to be all kinds. And it's not going to be stoppable because it's going to be a multifaceted progression.
No, I totally hear you, man. Nathan, I'd love to hear from you, mate. I know that you've been quiet, and I probably Shut my face for a second.
I think Nathan's staying back a bit because there's crossover when he
Right,
talks.
of course,
There's a bit of
right.
yeah, there's a glitch.
So what was that? Yeah. I can finish
The
up.
only thing I was going to ask Antonio to do before we round out, maybe in a couple of minutes' time, is I know he's been making some recommendations to both of us on certain films by Philip K. Dick. I was hoping you could rattle those off with the audience just so that they can hear it as well.
Okay, so and I wanted to bring the conversation to this about the psychology and the energies involved with the DNA and the processing in the brain. So we're energies, we receive information, everything that we receive comes in terms of information that makes us and that guides and controls us. So Philip K. Dick had crazy dreams, he wrote stories about them, they became real in his time. He lost his mind because he was seeing these things happening in the real world, which he thought were just his own constructs, and wrote a whole load of different books that accurately depict our society. Now, he wrote these books in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, before CCTV, before mobile phones. So when you watch A Scanner Darkly and you bear in mind that mobile phones didn't exist, never mind facial recognition from CCTV footage, gait recognition, wiretapping, all of these things, he basically had them in the story in detail too, not just a vague expression, in detail. So
is it possible?
Go.
Is it possible he was privy to the information?
No. This is lots of people.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so lots of people have questioned this. Now he did live in Berkeley, so it's like a possibility that he had connections, but he was also a big druggie, so a drug addict.
Sure.
So, okay, for academics to deal with him, for the academics themselves to deal with him, would be a big no-no, because first of all, he's a science fiction writer in the 60s and 70s. They did not have any cred back then. Even though this is when Gene Roddenberry was, establishing Star Trek. So with him, he was an outcast, and he lost his mind, not because he was communicating with people, they were giving him ideas, he was putting them in books and then seeing them in reality. That's no reason to lose your mind. He was having dreams of it, and then he was writing stories, adding to it. If the dream finished before the story, he would basically just end the story. But he thought that there was technology to spy into his mind, to take the ideas, and eventually he had his place broken into and everything stolen. So he was convinced that there was some mechanism involved. Now, the last of his books explains his awakening, not to the flat earth or anything, his awakening to the crystalline quality of existence, and he expressed this in a book called Valis. It hasn't been made into a film yet. It might never be. Now, he explains that there is a consciousness that can communicate, that can, the Akashic records that can transfer information, and the way it did this consciousness, was by giving him a term that he was not familiar with. It's a medical term. It's for a condition that he didn't know about, and it told him to have his son checked out for this, so that Philip K. Dick would understand that this was not just a product of his imagination. He took his son to be screened. The son had this underlying condition which would have been life-threatening had it not been discovered so early, and this was his confirmation, which is why he then wrote A Scanner Darkly. Now, this guy had an experience of the world. Many people out there in crazy institutions, in psychiatric hospitals, have experiences of the world that don't gel with the rest of society. So we put them aside. Now, some of them are just, they're tortured souls. Some of them have ideas. I happen to know that people in the UK who develop free energy devices, one of the things that can be done to stop them from speaking about them is they can be sectioned. So this is one of the things that I know firsthand. So the idea that there is a consciousness that can communicate and that we can see reflected in the world, through our personal experience, when we start having sequences of synchronicities, it opens up the whole idea of there being a consciousness. I don't want to call it God, because God is a mistranslation. In Hebrew it's Elohim, and it means masters, plural, not one. So with the consciousness, the overall consciousness, having ability to hone in or synchronize, synchronize its energy to a point where we individually receive it, or through time, or at some point receive this resonance that allows for an exchange of information, be that healing. People have said that they've had healing, be it conceptualizing, like Tesla. Tesla didn't take credit for his ideas. He didn't take credit. Tesla said his ideas came to him. So, and he you know, in some of his more esoteric writing, he wrote a poem that talks about a cosmic gun, and he's talking about the information, how the information can hit you. He's talking about himself. He's the target. And
it's pretty deep, Antonio. I mean, like, you're touching on a lot of different things. I mean, we could do a whole show on just ayahuasca, DMT. Excuse me. Yeah, DMT, ayahuasca trips, and that whole idea of expanding consciousness and Gaia and Sophia and Mother Earth. We could go down that tangent. What I'm trying to say is that, okay, I'll tell you just my opinion of what you just said. People like Philip K. Dick, like George Orwell, I think the technology has been around for a lot longer than we can imagine. I think the people who had the manual had cell phones like a couple of 100 years ago. I think it's all very simplistic, photonic-based Earth technology, simple stuff. It's just been presented as this big, you know, Oz the Great and Powerful, but it's really just simplistic stuff that we can build. And so we're a fuzzy system, right? So if you think artificial intelligence, potentially, if the nucleus of Earth is almost like a recursive Tesla coil, symmetrical up and down, the twin vortices, right? The system is self-learning and self-aware. So you have people just, over a period of time, the energetics get very fast, and certain people will either have. See, you know, there are two different ways of looking at it. I believe that the elite have parties. I believe that the elite have parties where they invite certain people and they let them in on certain ideas. Or they tell them certain ideas so that those people like Bowie can go out and write these songs. Or they give them the songs. Do these people know exactly how the codes work? I'm not sure. Do they know exactly how the microphones are transferring the ohm frequency into a controlling mechanism? No, I don't think they understand that. What I'm trying to say is that there are these missing parts of data, like the understanding about the Ankh, for example. Most people esoterically talk about the Ankh from a symbolic mechanism, except it has so many more dimensions that people are completely unaware of. The Ankh symbolism is not only electromagnetic symbolism, it's also geometric language symbolism, it's the entire color spectrum, it's the 9-tone solfeggio, it's the stethoscope, it's the microphone, it's the almanac, you know, the zodiacal cross, it's the circle of life, it's the Ouroboros. I mean, I could go on forever what the Ankh can do, and not only that, it's possibly an actual device made out of copper coil and gold, set up in a certain geometry and a lattice structure at its molecular structure, that if you resonate it with your bones, which are hollow, and our lungs, which are a resonator, our whole body is a resonant device, right? And it's a recursive resonant device, the mirror of the energy and the information. Information is energy. Right? Yes. Information is energy. It's the laws of energy, right? Information is never lost. Energy is never lost. It's just propagated forth. So ideas coming to people makes perfect sense. You think I sit and choose every note that I play? I don't. I play thousands of notes per night. They come from somewhere. I'm watching the chat room. I'm doing other things. It's coming from somewhere. I keep thinking, is it stored in the water in my brain and the synapses? Really? No, it's not. But somewhere there's a vibrational pathway electromagnetically that's hitting my pineal. It's hitting the cross paths between my eyes and the optical nerve. It's hitting the cross vibration. You know what yo-yo is? Yo-yo is the eyes, O-O is the eye, and the Y-Y is the bridge of the nose. It's the bridge of, I mean, if you really look at the anatomy, we're recursively symmetrical inside and out, upwards and downwards. I encourage people to kind of look at some of the older videos where I overlay the graphics. Antarctica is the brain. Do we live inside the eye? A couple of things like that, where if you'll see this recursive symbolism, it's all about encoding magnetism. I'm just gonna throw this all together. Ptah, P-T-A-H, Peter. You know, the Memphis, the god of Memphis, Egypt. This is Elvis. This is why it's Elvis from Memphis. Okay, because Elvis Presley is Elvis is pelvis. That's why he thrusts his pelvis. It's all recursive code to encourage a vibrational frequency. And so when you vibrate frequencies higher and you double down on that, you can create harder and harder and more effective ripples in that tonality frequency. It's the same way you bend a note. You hear, I can subtly fade in a note or touch a note. I can bend a note. I can squeal a note. I can pinch harmonic a note. All of these things are a different way, and my right hand moves a certain way. So if I'm concentrating an effect of a ripple of magnetism, it's going to happen. So black magic is Ethiopian magnetism. It's based on the original thermodynamic coupling of the body being a resistor, our body being a vibrational tool, and using the Ankh as a microphone to speak into, connected to a wasp scepter, which is made out of zinc alloy. And you have this thing called the Jed pillar, which is a 4-part device that it was the original handheld battery. And so you create this thing with the Ankh, the wasp scepter, the Jed pillar. It has a little pincers that hits your toe. This guy, Ptah, some sort of god who was based, you know, Ptah Horus is Pythagoras. This is the original idea of mathematics and magnetism. Everything symbolically in religion today is based on the fundamental cymatic geometry of using magnetism to create minor miracles. So when you could use the Ankh and the staff to basically turn water into wine, you could perform minor electromagnetic magic, and it made you into a god. And that's how they basically they had the manual of how this all worked. I guess there were. This is where it falls apart for me. I wonder if it was given to certain people on Earth, or there were some sort of fallen angels that had this information. But it could be that they just stumbled upon this methodology because of the energetics of a propagating system that would eventually find both pathways. It would find the most evil and the most good.
Or it could be also the Plato's epochs of civilization, the reaching a zenith and then decline over and over.
Right.
So if we look at the ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, what we call the ancient Egyptians, they inherited the pyramids. They didn't build the pyramids. The guys who built the pyramids, we don't have any records of them. The ancient Egyptians, the people we refer to as the ancient Egyptians, had records of them. So these were guys that came way before them.
Okay, so here's a great way to follow through with that. Instead of us taking it down like we don't know, we do know a few things. We know that our bones are hollow. We know that we speak in order to communicate. So we're releasing vibrational energy using our bones and our lungs, and everything about us is resonant. And so when you talk about the value and the weight of words, you're talking about how you control the vibrations emanating from your soul or from your third density manifestation. And so you can study this thing called ring stones, these African monuments, right? Yeah, Michael Tellinger, exactly. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know about Michael Tellinger. But just listen to what the guy researched. Maybe he's totally wrong, but maybe you'll learn something and go off on a tangent, which is what I did. When I looked at those rocks, I was like, man, they look like our human bones. Of course, ring stones are our bodies. And then I was studying Ptah and Egypt at the time, and I'm like, oh, why does the doctor have a stethoscope? Why does Ptah holding the staff look like an Oscar, a statue? So on and so forth, and all these recursive things. And if you want to think about it in a sinister way, you can, but if you want to think about it as like, how do we hide the truth in plain sight? You say it's all about a story. You humanize it. You make it about the devil and about God. But when it's really about controlling our physical reality using simplistic rare earth materials like gold, like zinc, like copper, things that, why do you think like, Penny Lane Why is penny such a penny and copper? And there's a reason all the gold is gone. There's a reason people hoard pennies. There's a reason for all of this, because pennies and vinegar and cotton balls can create batteries. You know, you can create a very simplistic JED type battery, a handheld thing that runs perfectly fine forever with simple household tools, and that's what's being hidden. So instead of complaining that it's being hidden and that it has been hidden, go make some zinc freaking JED pillar batteries. Go buy some gold strand and wind it around a magnet and make an ankh and start humming into it and see if you can change reality. Do something that is different. Do something new today.
Well, Nathan
vote for Take Back Space in 2050 million.
that was freaking cool. Nathan pointed out in our the first Mechanics of the Fourth Wall that you can use your body to make a sound that manifests reality. So you can manifest a human being bringing you a glass of water. You need certain prerequisites, like a human being within earshot, you know, and water, but just with sound.
Here, let me blow your mind even further. Is the fact that when you're in a relationship and your girlfriend or boyfriend brings you that glass of water, is that already you manifesting your dream reality? Is that how it actually manifests? Is that why we're so fooled? Because we think it's more magical than what it already is, because it's already freaking fucking magical.
I think it's because we don't see the connection between our intent. So the first thing is the decision, the intent to call for a glass of water, and we're stuck with this mechanical, physical side of the world, and then this other ethereal, magical, at a distance, voodoo, projection, and we don't see the link between the two. The link between the two is intent. It's intent that's there for both, for voodoo and for conjuring a glass of water, you know. So, and unless we realize that the thing that's common to both is intent, we're not going to start practicing that intent. So you just talked about the ankh and using it. So you have to have the intent to, first of all, arrive at having an ankh, and then using it, and then you have to have an idea of what you want to do it for. You don't just want to sit there blowing bubbles through it. You're going to have an intention, and it's the intention.
And you have to have the skill too. Like when I talked to Bob and I talked to Crow about it too. You can sit there with a violin and know how to play it and still not entice people if you don't play it a certain way. Even when you're skilled, you can still not be approaching a problem or an audience the correct way. And you have to test your ego, because people can be like, I've met classical musicians, I've met jazz guys, 30, 40 years my senior, who've played like my entire life. I could never sit with them in a jam session. But they appreciate where I come from because I'm not afraid of failing. And you just have to be afraid of failing, because the ego is where I think people have issues with one another.
Why couldn't you sit with them in a jam session? Is it this musical style, or is it something else about it?
Well, because, for example, like I know, even though I spent 20 years playing music and I know a lot of jazz, I simply haven't spent 35 years playing in a big band to be able to sit with guys like that and not only feel good about myself, but not impress them, but allow them to feel good about them having invited me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so if I know I can't fulfill that, if I know that I'm going to enter a situation that, even though I'm clearly skilled and I could probably do it, it's not a fearful thing. I'm not avoiding doing it because I'm fearful. I'm avoiding it because it's the least optimal choice I can make. You know what I mean? And I think you have to optimize and make things efficient. That's why I'm saying about the ankh. There's one thing to read about it and to know about its symbology and to dismiss it as one piece of esoterica. What I'm saying is, if you think it's really interesting and important, take the time to really understand it. I mean, and I'm coming from a place of, I can talk to you literally about almost any topic you could possibly imagine. I'm not into sports at all, but I can talk to you about sports. I'm not into hunting at all. I can talk to you about hunting. I'm not into cars really. I can talk to you about engines. And I did that. I wasn't that. And I did that on purpose. I decided to be the person that could not only specialize, but also be able to be a master generalist, because we're living in an environment that requires that. This is the big hoax. The hoax is to make us single simpletons.
Yes.
But in fact, we're much more capable than everyone lets on. And that's, but the thing is taking that understanding and using it instead of saying, yeah, we're great, and they're telling us we're shit, so we're just great. But I'm like, yeah, you're great, but then get good at your instrument. And when you're good at your instrument, play songs that people like. And then see if you can make that judgment, because you're not even close.
Can I just say something there, Chris, actually, because I know you're referring instrument to guitar or
I am,
music,
I know.
but your instrument at the moment, and it's something I am, again, in absolute awe of, is how you use your equipment. I know I've mentioned this loads of times in your feeds, but you make it seem really easy. And I know Bob's in the chat feed at the moment, he'll testify that it's easy. But maybe you could round out the show by telling us a little bit more, again, about your channel and what you're doing, and then I'll bid the people in the chat feed and your good selves farewell, and we'll wrap up the show there, if that's all right.
Awesome. Cool, man. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate letting me curse so much, and I kind of needed it today after last night being so
tempered.
You
yourself. I've got no problem with you cursing. So
awesome. No, sometimes I try. I mean, see, that's a very good thing, actually. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I let myself go today intentionally because it's a specific situation. On Take Back Space, I tend to think that there's a younger audience that needs, tempered and non-threatening talk. And so I try not to curse and not to sound like somebody who, parents wouldn't let their kids watch, because that's who we need, man. Like, we need the 12, 16, 18-year-olds to not think we're weird when we're telling them, hey, you should question things.
I know, sorry, Antonio.
That's what's on YouTube.
For me personally, I loved Space. I absolutely loved it. And that's why your channel is so good, because it's, again, using the same terminology, but taking back Space, it's brought the magic back. It's fantastic.
Look at it, man. You're saying it, right? It feels good to say. When I came up with the name, when I said it to myself, I'm like, that sounds good. If you announce it, it sounds good. I feel good, so people must feel that. Think about it. I know a lot of people, especially, and this comes from maturity. I know a lot of people hate to say when you get to a certain age, but when you get to a certain age, you start thinking about things differently, and you start taking them for what they are. And it's a little morsel here and there, but we want the kids to know that it's all cool. We need to know that space is still fun. It's not just this horrible place that we've been denied and we're imprisoned and we're fucked. Like, no one wants to hear that they're fucked. People want to wake up and have a coffee and say, like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. Wow.
When you said
that's cool. Like, that's the vibe we want. Sorry.
So, Chris, when you said before, what does it matter? How does it change? What's the impact that finding out that it's flat might have? You've just hit the nail on the head. It stops people feeling trapped. It makes people understand that, other mysteries haven't been discovered. The ancient civilizations didn't have everything covered. And I think we might be the civilization that actually gets there to the point of no longer going through a cataclysmic event and arrives at a point of utopia. I know it's idealistic, but
right in the middle of that, Antonio, that I would really like. Truthfully, I really enjoy talking to you guys. So I'm telling you, just from a friendly standpoint, if we insert just one more sentence into what you just said, which is every day, if you wake up and it's flat, you still got to go through the motions. What are those motions? That's what I mean. Like, when you wake up, if everyone agrees that it's flat, and literally it goes from like 10 million hits to 20 billion hits, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What is going to change in your day-to-day routine? Are you going to meet up? What I'm asking, like, specifically is, like, are you going to call up a bunch of flat earthers, meet at a coffee shop, or is it going to lose its luster because everyone has already agreed upon it? Or are you going to go to debates? Or are you going to start a petition to bring down NASA? I mean, that's what I'm asking. What I'm saying is, what's fun? What's actually fun? Waking up and discovering and having an ongoing life quest. And so for me, it's like the question shouldn't ever really be answered, because what would the fun be in that?
Well, here's my answer to you. Here's my answer to you. So there's a consensus that the Earth is flat. So now we need to verify it. So there's a trip across Antarctica, and yes, it gets verified. Now, the impact that it has. You get up in the morning, you have to have breakfast, and you have to deal with the rest of the world. But as you deal with the rest of the world, the animosity that has been in the world with this illusion of separate, of being individuals, that we all die alone, all these illusions, they're all gone. It makes it very difficult to be nasty to another human being who you know is sharing the same experience, is having the same kind of input and output into
Okay,
this
I'm going to
planet.
be a hardhead about this. All right,
Yeah.
here's where I have my issue with that.
Okay.
Yes, maybe. But also it still requires people to work on themselves. It doesn't look like they're not going to wake up and it's going to be flat, and because everyone agrees that it's flat, they're simply just going to be nicer people. They still have to practice being nice every day for 10,000 hours after the Earth is flat. You know, that's all I'm saying, and I'm saying why not just start working on that regardless of the shape?
The whole idea that you're positing is brilliant, because people were asking, so what happens next? What happens next is we start laying down the foundations for what will happen when it does reach consensus, because we look at the world from, you know, we have maybe 80 years on this plane, and we think of what we can achieve. And the thing about the Illuminati and the New World Order is they don't think that way. They think in terms of hundreds of years, in terms of whole civilizations, countries changing names. You know, they look at things in a really long-term sense. We have to start looking at things in a long-term sense. We have to start being... We have to start showing.
Yes, Neo, you're seeing the light. Exactly. That's what dude, I mean, I'm telling you, it took me a long time to calm down and realize that unlearning is a longer journey than learning all this shit.
Yes.
Learned incorrectly. So for me, that's why I'm saying, what does it matter if it's flat or not, or round or not, is because that's not a question that I think I can even posit yet, let alone have any type of logical explanation for, because if I take it with a grain of salt, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I wake up and there are birds.
Yes.
You know, there's a telescope. There are you guys on YouTube. In a few years, it'll be 4K streaming, and then there'll be some stupid show on ABC, and there won't be cable networks, and soon people will throw out TVs, and it'll be flat. I've seen all this shit. Yeah. And I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. That's, in my way, every time I thought, oh, I'll just wait for something to happen so that I can do it, it didn't happen. Every time I said, you know what, I'm not going to waste one more second, I'm just going to be brave and go out there and do whatever the fuck I want to do, that's when things changed. And I'm telling you, it's 100% every single time I just sat there and complained on the couch. I was like, I just felt shittier and shittier. And I called somebody else and made them feel scared and shitty about life, and they eventually lashed out at me. I can't imagine how many flat earth conversations have gone sour in the last year, including mine, like screaming, losing hours of my day over nothing, shit that we can't even ask yet.
Yeah.
I'm pleading with good people, because I know there are like 300 really smart people who can do a lot of shit. I got into flat earth. I even wanted to email Lord Stephen Christ. I'm being so frank today. I wanted to email him because I'm like, man, did you really make that 3D model? It's fucking awesome. Like, it made me think about so many things that flat earth wasn't making me think about. And that's honestly, no one said that. That's the obvious point. People dance around it all the time. And the pitter patter is the shit that turn people off. People like when you call it out. The fact is that CG model is amazing. It makes you think about libration. It makes you think about cellular cosmogony. It makes you think about the stupid word rectilineator, which people think is a stupid sexual I mean, it makes you think. It's so obvious how people think that you can analyze it. And if you really want to do something, you can use that information, or you can sit back and be a couch potato and observe it for its personalities. You know what I'm saying? I just can't sit back. I've watched too much TV. I've played too many video games. I just simply feel disgusting sitting down and playing a video game. And man, I'm fucking awesome at video games. I don't like no one. Like, dude, I've won like tournaments and shit, and like, and I really love it. And I just simply know that sitting here day after day, asking simpler questions, softer questions, more logical shit, I just feel more at ease in my soul. I don't need to know the shape of the earth anymore. I don't care. I truly almost don't care anymore.
Totally fair enough. Kudos to you. In fact,
almost. I'm not there yet, but almost.
I have a nice thought for you. Okay. You know, when you're playing guitar, you must have come to. I play the guitar as well. I'm not as good as you, but I've fallen into that stage where you're almost not really there. You're just enjoying what's happening. So you've been to that stage, correct?
And that's what proved it to me.
Yeah,
I've been on stage where I had let me tell you this one, you'll like this.
Yeah.
Webster Hall in Manhattan, 200 people. I'm playing a solo, and I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was going to pass out because I'd been singing, and I wasn't as good as I am now at singing. I didn't know how to use my breath properly, so I was singing and performing and jumping. I was the most animated. I used to jump off the stage every song, every encore, and I realized that I was imagining the whole thing. I realized that it was all a dream, like that it was a manifestation of my mind, for sure. I felt a creep came over my shoulders. I felt cold. I felt like outside my body. I had a real, and then I brought myself back. I could have let myself go.
So, but you hadn't taken anything? No.
I never drank. I never used to do anything before any show. I would never do that.
Okay, so here's my thought for you, okay? You know, you're in that kind of trance. Yeah, it's almost a trance. It's not really a trance. It's a clear version experience of existence. You don't have the clutter. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's also part of the movies where it slows down and the audio, they turn off the treble, the high end.
Yeah. So you're there. You're functioning in that role perfectly well. Okay. Now picture that's the state of life in the future when everybody has figured out all the teething problems. We've gone through everything. Everybody figures out what life was for. If that is the quality of everybody's life, that state.
Can I just tell you something, man? Sitting here right now, Wednesday at 8 o'clock, this is what it's about. At the end of the day, the rhetorical question, which is what are you going to do after it's flat, is basically what people really want is to get up, smoke a cig, have their coffee, and meet up with a bunch of like-minded, cool people who are nice to look at, easy on the ears, and do something fun.
Yes,
and when I pressed Jaron on his show, and he's like, "We got to teach people," I'm like, "Dude, you're doing it. You're like literally doing it right now." And we're doing it right now with 80 people. We're not we're teachers. When I hang up, I'm back to being me. When I go back and do my shit, and in an hour it might stream, I'll be CD again, and then tomorrow I'll be who I need to be for me, and that doesn't matter to you guys. I don't exist to you guys offline. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what's cool, is that we can control that. You decide to do the thing. I decide to be an icon and a voice, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter. What matters is right now, 3 cool people and 80 other people are listening to 3 cool people talk about shit they want to talk about. I'm enjoying myself. You're having a good time. That's what life is actually filled with. Not flat Earth, not concave Earth, and not ego. Like.
You know what? I think that's what actually draws people to the whole flat Earth thing. The truth is, it being flat isn't actually, in concrete terms, it's not really that important. What it's the word is slipping. It's the significance of it that's important. So people are listening to this, 80 people listening. Okay, over the course of time, a lot more people will listen. And the reason they listen is that they enjoy this kind of exchange, because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to engage with this kind of conversation at home. You know, their spouse or their siblings, whoever, they want to talk about the Kardashians or... And
but you know what it is, though, Antonio. Let's dissect that for one moment, if you'll allow, because it's a great point. You always bring up these awesome points. It is that, but it's many levels of that, right? It's the personalities. It's the chillness in the voice, or the non-chillness in the voice. It's being able to listen to somebody go on for an hour without getting tired, like. People say what they will about Crow, but you listen to Crow's interviews with people, and those things go by in 2 hours like it's 5 minutes, and you're like, damn, I wish those guys were here hanging out and talking to me about this shit, because I have a lot to fill in there. That people want to be part of it. You want to be part of a cool conversation. What I'm trying to say is that when you're actually in person with people having a cool conversation, you got to check a lot of factors. You got to check the ego. You got to stop thinking that we know anything more than the next guy. Like, I don't want to listen. I could sit here and say I know a lot more than you guys about 100 other things. Would you really want to fucking talk to me? No. Well, you know what I mean? It's just that simple. Like, if you hear somebody complain enough, like, man, that's why I'm not in a relationship anymore. Like, that type of drama is just so fucking pointless to me. Like, I know I sound really scoffish about it, but I'm just like, man, I'm so tired of it in business, and it just goes nowhere. And what I'm trying to do differently is to, like, re-inject naivete and idealism into a really scary thing for people, which is studying and being caring.
Learning. Have you heard the video? Sorry, the rap by what's his name? Willis. Tyler Willis. It's called 1111. And the start of it, you'll love it, because the start of it is saying, fuck the New World Order, you know, just lots of fucks. And then later, it goes into, but there's reasons to love. I love, and he starts reading off a list of things that are there to be grateful for. One of the things he says is, I love that we can live forever and never know all of it. And I think, oh, that is such a beautiful line. We can live forever and never know all of it.
See, this is beautiful, man. But I hate to be the Debbie Downer here, but I pulled it up right here, right? This is what gets me about it. It says 1111 by Tiller Wills, right? Yeah. Break, the best anti-NW song ever.
Yes.
Man, that is not helpful to somebody doing work and feeling good about life. It's just not. I read that title, and I'm a human being as well as anyone else. I know exactly what it means. I know exactly who typed it. I know exactly who clicked accept, submit, and made that title, and for what reason. And everyone who does YouTube, who's skilled enough to make a fucking video and submit it, knows exactly what they're putting in the fucking title. And except for 50-year-old dudes who put the date from the camera, you know, like, whatever. But I'm talking about people like us who know what they're doing, know exactly what that title is going to do. And best NW, I don't want to say NWO. It's a trigger word. It's disgusting. I don't care if there's a New World Order. It could mean 100 other things. Order is a good word. World is good. New is good. If you break it up into a different way, it's not scary. And for me, it's not scary at all. But I don't want to see those titles anymore. It's just like, God fucking damn it, man. Like, can we stop? Is there any other creative way of describing a truth movement than saying, we hate all these ugly people who hate us? Isn't there a way to say, hey, we're really loving...
when you see constant Illuminati stuff.
I just can't stand it anymore. I've unsubscribed from everything like that. Even people that I really like, as people in the chat room, and we discuss things, there are certain titles of videos that make me feel like I just want to throw up in the morning. So I've just decided to watch Screen Junkies, which are, at least those guys are being genuine critiques of movies. They don't pose as any other fucking fakers. They're like, listen, we're going to nitpick the fuck out of these movies. We're cynical, and we monitor analytics there. And I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I vibe with that. Like, you're being honest. You know, that's why they're trending that's why they trend every day. They put those videos out, 70,000 likes on each honest trailer in 4 hours. Do you know why they connect? They're being honest. They're being sincere. They're being self-aware. They're doing what we're doing now, which is breaking the fourth wall in a way that relates to people. And eventually, the naysayers will come around because they'll feel left out. The lovers will have the orgy, and the wallflowers will eventually feel like, man, I just got to put up or shut up. That's the truth. I mean, whether it's flat or not, it's just about the approach, is what I'm saying.
I think your attitude towards terms like the New World Order, if more people understood that just by repeating the term, you're endorsing it, you know, involuntarily, but you're endorsing it. You're saying it exists, it's true, it's real, you know.
Let's say you're pushing the wave forward. You're helping that wave along. Yes, and I'm going to say it one last time. If you say NWO and then 10 other people say it, you're just making that wave more powerful. Why do you want to propagate that name? Let's say flower and have 10,000 people say flower, and at least we're thinking about flowers. We're not thinking about the committee of 200, for fuck's sake, every day. I don't want to think about these guys. Like,
But you know what? One of the things, the bad guys, let's just call them the bad guys, one of the things they detest the most, the thing that unnerves them, is to be considered irrelevant. So once people stopped addressing them, talking about them, considering them, their influence wanes. you know, it starts to diminish. So this is why we have the false flags, the hoax events, to try to keep our attention on them. Now, there are a lot of people whose attention are shifting to other things. You know, there's a lot of people going into growing their own food. So hours dedicated to that rather than television. And there is a shift. And it's thanks to people, you know, like you, pointing stuff out. Like, you know, stop mentioning the New World Order so much.
Dude,
you know,
I mean, not to mention, not to say that there aren't certain things that I've heard in Flat Earth that people are going down that could be great jump-off points. For example, like people who question dinosaurs, while it's very far-fetched, there's a lot of evidence that points that it might be a logical trajectory. But what I'm saying there, I'm pulling my, but no, what I'm saying is that it might lead to people actually going out into the field and doing some geology, which would be fucking great, and streaming geology to people. In amateur, independent geology, archaeology, that's why I think, you know, Flat Earth is not all bad, because people are questioning a lot of things. And so, but you need to find the things that might actually get us somewhere to do fun things, as opposed to like constantly beating down. Like, we're not going to get these balloons launched. Do you understand what I mean? I hate to say it, but it's such a waste of time, and I'll tell you perfectly why. Because you have to get up much higher than you need to. It's very, very costly. You need a lot of money and somebody with a lot of time. I mean, I'm just saying it's not going to manifest in the way it's imagined that it might. Just coming from somebody who's produced very complicated projects that took 2 years to manifest with very big corporations, it takes a lot of work just to get a media package together, let alone a rocket, like a weather balloon synchronized from different countries with proper data analysis to get it corroborated with a paper. And like there's no point in doing it if we're not going to use that evidence to actually work against the system and take them to court, right? What's the fucking point of just proving it to 50 people? I don't see the point of that. Like, that's totally ridiculous.
This is what I was referring to earlier when I said about the Anti-Defamation League. Their tactics work. So, and you just mentioned taking people to court. That's, you know, there are tactics we haven't even conceptualized. That there would be people in the Flat Earth movement or the Truth movement that haven't voiced themselves yet. There will be people that have capabilities, that have ideas that we haven't had yet.
The cleverness of why I always bring up honest trailers and Screen Junkies is not just because they're awesome. It's because they nailed a formula. They stumbled. Not only did they stumble upon it. Honest trailers is a concept I did 10 years ago with me and my girlfriend. We were just messing around. We were like, we should do these trailers that are like just telling people exactly, like these advertisements where they're like, could cause mouth bleeding and nasal, and if you're dead, call a doctor. And I'm like, dude, like, what about all this shit? You know, we should tell people. So anyway, they touched upon a formula that can hit 80,000 eyeballs. How do we do that? That's what I'm saying. Put minds on that. Put some like videos together, learn how the graphics are done, learn how they put the titling, look at the fonts, look at the music, look at how quick they edit, look at the people working on it, get the community together. Screen Junkies is a community, guys. It's not people who are syndicated. It's not anybody smarter than you and I. It's not anyone prettier than Nathan and Antonio. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, the fact of the matter is these guys sit there and they're just honest people, and they talk about what they want to talk about.
And they must love it.
They love it, and and the more they love it, the more the people feel the love, and they call in on Skype, and they're like, guys, I just want to thank you. I don't even watch shitty movies anymore. I only watch your trailer for 5 minutes because you've learned how to condense it to a palatable form. That's what I hear. I take it for the comedic and fun value, but I also understand it as a means of communication. This is how you win. You win by not just making a video that will scare the shit out of 30,000 people. You make a video that will long-term hit 15 million eyeballs because it's palatable. Do you get what I'm saying? You'll max out at conspiracy. Conspiracy maxes out. I've seen it my whole life. I watched internet from infancy till now. It always maxes out. It will. Flat Earth will eventually max out. Concave maxed out. Heliocentrism is made on different rules. It's based on a different game. It is the game. Because you understand what I'm saying? Like, we're the chess pieces on a game that already exists. In order to get off the board, we have to either win or accept that you're on the board, which is why sheeple. You know, sheeple accept they're on the board and they play the game. I've recognized that I have a choice, possibly, maybe not.
I have an idea for getting the eyeballs. I think we should all, from now on, anybody who comes out as a flat earther making videos, this excludes everybody who's already making them, okay? But from now on, anybody who comes out should do it completely naked.
No, I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, let's be aware of this big elephant in the room, which is the fact that I'm just going to spill the beans. I watched the whole thing. Okay, I watched the Tiger Dan thing. I watched the Thrive and Survive thing. I watched the Lord Stephen Christ thing. I watched the guys that follow him make videos about other people. I watched the listing off of the things. I watched the Rotundant. You know how much time and creative energy was wasted on that? Do you know that it led nowhere because we're back here with no better answer as to whether the Earth is flat or round, right? Can we just be frank about that? I just watched it just because I knew, in a way, from doing design work, that there's a cycle to it, and it manifested and that's what happened, man.
But Chris,
so it's not sad, but it's also kind of like, damn, can't we get better at this? Can't we just get more efficient?
Sorry, the rectilineator is a brilliant idea, but you know why he dropped it?
Sure.
It was showing a straight line. It was not showing concavity.
What I'm saying is, does that matter?
No.
Basically, because when you say that, what it does is, in all fairness, it bolsters your point. It rah-rah-rahs the crowd in the chat room. It disses Stephen Christ. You see, you did 3 negatives without doing a single positive.
I like the guy. Yeah, I like the guy. And I think he showed a lot of integrity.
You watch, like, you're a super nice guy and you realize what I just said and you're like, I'm going to backtrack. Now we've wasted
No. I've had conversations with him. And when he came out saying he was dropping it, I messaged him and I said, dude, you've just shown the quality of your integrity.
I like that people are able to look at videos and backtrack. And listen, there's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
No, but
I'm in no way judging that. What I'm just saying is, people who are so smart. Do you get what I'm saying? This is where it falls apart for me. Think about it. You're an individual like Stephen Christ, who seems like a cool, smart dude, right? Dude has the skills to use Lightwave like that to make a model that I, with my skills of fucking 20 years, took me months to figure out how he did the inverted textures and all the shit. Finally figured it out. I'm like, dude, this guy has the skills to do that, but these are the videos that it just doesn't match up. You talk about things not matching up. Same thing with people who preach love and shit, and I'm not mentioning by name, but this is how it is in the drama, where it's like, yeah, I love you because you believe in what I believe in. Oh, but I hate you because you just decided you didn't believe in it. What the fuck is that about, man? That's exactly what we got ourselves into in the first place.
So
these are
this
exactly
is what
people who act like that on TV, and it takes less than 2 seconds for somebody to watch a title, literally a title, not even a title and a thumbnail will piss people off to the point where they'll unsubscribe out of vindictiveness, spreading more animosity on the web. Do you understand how that's what I look at? I'm no longer part of it because there's nothing I can do but disengage from that.
Yeah, well, do you know what? Even though you're not a flat earther, you're definitely welcome to here, but I am going to indignantly resent you saying that I'm backtracking. No, I was just...
I will apologize for that, man. I was totally wrong.
I was just pointing out the fact that that's why he stopped it. He stopped it because it was showing straight. Now, he hasn't actually said this. I'm deducing this from the fact that he hasn't said it. He said it was not showing the concavity. Now, he hasn't said it was showing a straight line. He said it didn't work. So I'm inferring that it would have shown straight, going basically.
Man, I mean, it's a whole conversation to have if somebody would like to have it on a calm level. If you really look at all his actual technical videos and not the drama videos, and you go through the 3D models, there's a lot of conversation to be had, a lot of really good and fun conversation to be had, a lot of logical interpretation of shit to be had. And it's totally not a loss of time if approached in a certain way, which is basically what I did. I stopped commenting on the videos. I stopped liking the videos. I stopped subscribing. I just I looked into libration. I looked into how to build a 3D model with inverted light. I looked into the Jedge and Shine. There are things that can be discussed. And what fucking sucks is that basically people talk about the way he looks.
Yeah.
And he talks about the way he looks and how people perceive the way he looks, and it's insane to me that you can build a model in 3D, and those are the videos that come out. I mean, why don't we retexture that model? Why isn't there like a wiki made by flat earthers that has all the stuff without any hoax words or NW or trigger words that we know, man, this is fucking bullshit that people like put these titles in and they say, this is what we're railing against, and they still put the titles in, like this is what you're, I'm sorry, man, but it's the truth. Like, it's the fucking truth.
Chris, you have to consider something that, you know, you spoke before about levels, okay? So you're at a level that people who are using terms like New World Order, and this is not to dismiss them at all, but they're at a level where that is their level. That's the stage they're at. They will reach
encourage that. As people who love one another and care for one another, if we really try and do that and say that we do, we should not encourage that type of behavior.
Yeah, true.
If you saw an old lady trying to cross the street, you'd encourage her not to, just out of the goodness of your heart. And if you see somebody basically doing like something totally ridiculous, like scaring the shit out of their 70-year-old mother by telling her the Illuminati is NASA and Nazis and Project Paperclip and Operation Fishbowl, dude, you're going to isolate yourself. You're going to create rifts within a loving community that you might be wrong about. You might be very, very fucking wrong about. And whether you, and I will admit if I am totally wrong and it's flat, fuck it, it's flat. If it's concave, fuck it. I'll have to say that fucking Lord Stephen Christ was fucking right. But it doesn't matter. What matters is the approach, and it matters that to not be the same people that we're railing against. You get what I mean? Not be the media. I'm saying let's use their methodologies, because that can get our message out better. I'm not saying let's act like them by ostracizing and humiliating fellow truth seekers, because that's the biggest tell for me. I will not watch videos that diss people anymore, or even talk about, and I know that I'm in fact in a way doing what I hate doing, which is talking about people talking about people talking about people. And this is the only time I decided to do it, because I figure, fuck it, life is long and there's time, but this show might be the one time I ever talk to you guys, so I'm going to say what's on my mind.
No, you'll be talking to us again. This show, look, I think part of the reason that this is so enjoyable for me and Nathan and the other people in the chat is that we're all relaxed. You know, you're relaxed. You're not policing your language. You know, nobody here is going to ostracize you for swearing. Now, before we get to like the end, I really want to know. I asked Nathan to ask you this, but he hasn't gone, so I'm going to ask you. It's about the moon, okay?
Let's do it.
So, you know the points on the moon. So we have the full moon. We have the grey patches. What the hell are those? And then we have the patches that are that look like craters that seem to be sending out way too much light. It's almost as if they're sending out the amount of light that would be shared out around the grey patch. Do you have any idea yourself?
There are a couple of things to study when it comes to that. There's a gravitational map that was made by the Grail missions to the moon. Whether you believe it or not, it's an interesting thing to look at, because it shows the hot spots and the cold spots and the red and blue shift and almost like this orchestral symphonic light show that happens on the moon. But it's happening because of inverting polarities, reversing polarities of these hot spots on the moon. It's a very interesting, deep topic that I could dive in for an hour about, but in fact, the lunar surface is not even in any way. It's not reflecting light evenly. It's not reflecting heat evenly. It's doing something very different because it has a core, and it has these basins made of basaltic fluid, right, that have been frozen and electrified. Listen, I'm going to throw in, you want to hear what I think about it. I guess people want to hear what I think about it. It looks like ice to me, right? It looks like it's cold, and it looks like it's electrified at the same time. So there's this electric scarification idea about the craters, right? The linear, like the strings of circular craters. But I'm looking into the fact that there's music, there's harmony, right? There's a harmonious dance of waves between us and the sun and us and the moon. And on the surface of the regolith, on the surface of the moon, there are magnetic fluxes that jive with its positioning. I'm telling you, there are certain little dots on the moon, like Aristarchus probably jives with a certain part of Earth. and Tycho jives with another part of Earth. You know, it gets into this whole idea where everybody has their own star in the galaxy, that there's a star for every living human, for every spirit that exists, and when the star falls, you die, and there's a star that's born to replace that in a perfectly harmonious system. And I believe that the sun and the moon both are part of the symphony. They create this electromagnetic polarity reversal in a perfect structure that creates what they call the Goldilocks zone. You know what I mean? This livable zone for us, where the habitable environment. But I think they use these terminologies that make it look simplistic, like weather patterns. It's hot, it's cold, it's reflective, but it's much more complex than that. I think there's a sonic function going on with the moon. I think the moon's surface is based on actual sound and electricity, like stuff that we're not really looking into. And so water, like salt water, is dielectric. And if these basaltic flats like the Mare, the Maria, the seas, and the Oceanus Procellarum on the moon are made out of very magnetic materials that are almost fluid-like or ice-like and are being affected by electricity, they could be creating these different types of features that we look at and we're like, what the fuck is that? Why does it reflect not like a mountain that I think I see? I don't think I don't think it's going to do things that we expect. I think that's why, looking at it right now, we're observing a very unique, that's an oxymoron, a unique object. You know, we're observing something that has its own properties, which is why, like, you know, the candlelight experiment or the water experiment that I tried with the moonlight has so many more properties that are not part of that experiment, that even if we had results that were perfect, I wouldn't take them, I would take them with a grain of salt, because it wouldn't mean anything. Let's say the moonlight is cold. What do I do tomorrow? Nothing. I can't do anything with that data. But what I can...
Wait a second. One second. Say the
Yeah.
moonlight is cold, and say the
Okay.
moonlight helps vegetation in the natural world, not in greenhouses.
Right.
So let's say the moonlight has this effect. The first person to make a lamp that mimics moonlight will become a multimillionaire, because all
Right.
the cannabis growers will use it, and they will get a higher yield much
But
faster.
don't you think they're using those sodium lights for a reason?
Yeah, but they heat, and the moon takes away the heat. So I'm thinking...
But I'm saying sodium, the 3,000, I don't want to admit that I know all this shit, but you know, the $3,000 sulfur nitrogen light bulbs that they use for those grow rooms are based on this science.
Yes, but they heat. They send out heat. I'm
Yeah,
saying
the
the
moon
first
heats.
lamp
The
that
moon
actually... Say again?
The moon heats. I know there's this idea that it's a cooling device. It's just cooler than the sun, but the moon heats.
Okay, so...
And it doesn't heat in a way like an oven. Like, it's not about convection. This is about thermodynamics in a way that we don't believe me, I've looked into this in a way that if you take away our conventional understanding of like how ovens work and how a match lights in our atmosphere, it's very different than how the moon is functioning. It's very, very different. We're getting an accumulated, developed image of the moon on our exosphere that is all already manipulated by laws that we are completely unaware of, like completely like childlike notions about. So to say that it's fake or not fake or where it is, I have no, like, there is no way of really telling that, because matter might not exist like we know it, you know, 100 miles out.
You want to hear a crazy thought? This is one of my crazy thoughts that I'm just going to put out there, and if people laugh and ridicule, that's all right, you know, I'm not going to die. So, you know, the sun sends out energy that creates form, creates information, and the moon seems to take out. So you've got the sun-drying qualities of the sun, and you've got the corrupting qualities of the moon. You know, in Israel, they dry dates, and they have them spread out on sheets all day. That's just there, you know, in the wild, just huge sheets covered with dates. And at night, they cover them so the moonlight won't get to them. So I'm thinking, do you know what? Going back to the DNA question and our consciousness and the mechanisms involved, okay, what if life, consciousness arrives on this plane from, and I say plane, just arrives.
Sure, whatever. It's all good, man. I never take offense to that.
Yeah, so through an energetic mechanism that has a feedback loop. Okay, so the sun sends in and the moon takes out. If that's what's happening, how would we test it? And once we tested it, would we be able to trace those energies, those signals, to the source that's creating them? would that source end up being the center of the universe in a global model? Or would that source be somewhere that would rather remain unknown?
Listen, and somebody in the chat room just said, I hate when people say that's pointless or it's not going to work out. And I'm absolutely not one of those people. Believe me, I'm a creative person who hates when people say, oh shit, Debbie Downer. I'm not saying that Brian Mullen is not a super smart guy whose experiment is totally a workable one. What I'm saying is that if the moonlight is cold and the sunlight is hot, how are you going to use that in your daily life? Like,
with the grow lamps.
If that's your, if that's your choice.
No, come on, you must be thinking, dude, that's a good idea. If I can mimic it.
No, I try not even to talk about that shit online, but anyway, the truth of the matter is, no, this is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, and I told this to Crow, I said that if you dismiss everything, throw the baby out with the bathwater, like the fact that sodium lights are based on understanding of how the moonlight works. Instead of saying that the moon is fake and sodium lights are fake and whatever, you know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I'm saying find the relationship pattern, prove it to yourself. If you sit in your room alone and you're like, man, NASA, everything they've ever said in their lives, they're fucking assholes. I never want to hear anything. Or you could say, well, maybe it's all there and they just told you a different story about it, and you just don't like that story and now you want a different story. It's much less fearful. It's much less painful. And and to answer the thing about the experiment with the cold moonlight, there have been experiments. It's just called different things. You know what I'm saying? I think that very much proven in the scientific world that the moonlight does a certain putrefying effect. That's why we know it does that. Well, that's why the information is even there about the fact that the moon is cool. No one just sat there in bed. I believe me, I don't think a flat earther just woke up and said, I'm going to make a video saying the moonlight is cold and I'm going to hypothesize that. That information was from somewhere. So somebody thought that, or the information has been proven that it is cold and the sun is hot.
But the crazy thing is that sometimes the information comes from tribesmen, you know, from ancient cultures that didn't even have electricity, or at least forgot their use of electricity. And
I think I have a great way of putting this all in a kind of great, like, nutshell. If you're going to write a book, about anything, you need your cover, right? You need your back face. You need your introduction. You need your fucking chapters, right? You need your headers and type. It needs all these parts. That's why I'm saying, like, yes, Brian Mullen does a brilliant video. He leads people into this path where they're doing a real experiment. Fuck yeah, I can watch that video. I can relate to that video. I can get on board with that experiment. I can riff on that. Awesome. That's why people thumbs up and no people thumbs down. It totally makes sense as to how people relate to that. Then I come along on this show and tell you, I don't think that's worthwhile because I don't think it's going to prove anything. I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I encourage experimentation because I'm doing the same sort of thing. But I haven't put out, and I'm not saying that I'm, this is actually, there's no way of saying this without sounding like an asshole, so I'm not going to say it. I have a lot of videos that I didn't put out, not because I'm special or anything, but because I'm waiting to see whether I can apply and give people things to do afterwards. I don't want to just put out something and say, hey, go do this, and then what comes next, because I don't want them to come back to my channel to find out what to do next. I want them to come across my channel, enjoy it, and get inspired to do something that they want to do. Yeah. I don't want to lead anybody. I'm not about the, like, you understand, like, I'm getting away from that because I don't want to do that anymore in my life. I just want to be a participant in a group effort to do something great.
This is why after you were on Globebusters, I was talking to Nathan about you and about the association, the conversations that you were having, the associations it was making in my little rattly brain were just awesome. It's like, wow, you know, there were terms that I was not familiar with, but a lot of what you were talking about, I was, and it's like, oh wow, what an amazing conversation. And I get what you're saying. You don't want to lead people. Sometimes it's difficult to word it, to say, to express the point where you're trying to say, my intent is not to cause action or stop action. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I wanted to do what Bill did and what Crow did in a way, except that Crow took that a little bit of the conspiracy angle, which I decided not to take. But Bill if you've seen his channel, Bill Bryson's channel. He hasn't posted in 2 years, but he was the first to stream 1080p, an 8-inch, I think, with a webcam, and got like Moon TV basically from like 2012. And I watched it, and I'm like, the most efficient thing I found in my life is to lead by example. You can't tell or force anyone to believe anything really at the core of it. It all has to be incepted. So to incept people, you have to actually do the work yourself, and people will either be inspired or they won't. And at the very core of it...
As we're coming up on about 3.5 hours now, guys, that's probably a nice place to leave it. Do your own research, make sure you investigate it. Is there anything that you want to add just before we sign out, CD?
Hey, I can do this real quick if you want. I can wrap up all our loose ends. So Lunar Wave is not a camera anomaly because it's diagonal. And it also, you move the camera so it moves to the other end of the moon. Sure, when you see the regolith of the moon, the ISO is at a point where you can't see shit around the moon. So it could be something that goes across the sky and we don't know. Crow disagrees with this. I don't know about that. It could be just isolated to the lunar surface. Is it a holographic three-dimensional projection like Tupac or like the Rose in that guy's book? I don't think it's that personally. It could be. I'm willing to admit it might be. But, and finally, Lunar Wave seems like something going on with one of the layers of our Earth in some sort of way. And it could be that they're blasting with HARP on the ionosphere and we're seeing ripples in a pond like that, like heat ripples on the ionosphere. It could be some sort of effect of heat waves coming between us and the moon radiates its own, like I was talking about. There is this whole tangent where the moon could be a very complex symphonic polarity machine that is sending us pulse waves, and that could be part of it. It also very much could be the fact that this is the first time we're filming in 1080p. I mean, we as in the community is filming in much higher definition, and maybe it's a much more natural occurrence around the equinoxes that we've never seen before. It's clearly not something I did an edit because people caught it live. The first one that I caught was caught by a viewer, and Crow saw his 2 years after he had filmed it or something, or like way after. Sorry, I might be wrong about that. So it's not something that really anybody wants to be identified with. I didn't set out to be another lunar waver in any way, or to propagate the myth that the moon is fake in any way, because I don't know. I just think the moon is there and we can see it, and it does these really fucking awesome things that I'm trying to figure out in some way to explain that doesn't sound fearful or fear-mongering. And in terms of the gear setup, one day I'm going to really show you guys. I mean, I just wanted to wait for the new scope, because what's the point of showing you guys the old scope? But at some point, I'll show you. I have a laptop, a MacBook Pro that I'm talking to you on right now with a side-by-side screen, right? That's where I basically monitor the stream so I can have everything open. I have this shitty laptop, this Toshiba, which I think is just at its verge of breaking, but that runs the Elgato capture card, which is an HD capture card, maxes out at 1080-60. I run that. I run an audio jack from my iMac, which is on the other side of the room where it has all the guitars, my little studio session, and my little studio corner of the house where I have all the guitars, the keyboard, drums, the amplifier, and everything. That iMac sends a gold-plated audio RCA into the capture card, right? And so the laptop is picking up the external audio and then a micro HDMI from the Sony that goes out my front door into the telescope that's on my porch. And so I have a splitter as well, an HDMI splitter where I could put multiple feeds, but I tried that when I first got it and it dropped out the stream, so it's unreliable, but I really would love to be able to do a wide shot with the telephoto and then flip back and forth for you guys to show you the zoomed in shot, because that, I think, as soon as HDMI gets faster, or maybe things move to Thunderbolt 3 or whatever it is, maybe we can get to a point where we can switch video feeds back and forth, because I have telephoto, I have aspherical lenses where we can see the whole sky and things moving, maybe time lapse, like some crazy shit that I can do here that I can't stream. But that's where it's going to get to, 4K by this weekend. If anybody can, and I'm not talking about like just, this is not about balls out or me being cool or me being ahead of the game. This is about us taking back space and doing footage that's fucking awesome before NASA gets a hold of this 4K game. It's very rare to get a chance on a technical cycle, like a tech cycle of release, where it's this early in the game where this matters so much. Pixel density matters when it comes to, you know, observing space, and this is one of these fields that's just show up, play the game properly, and we might get some answers that we haven't had before because it's totally new. It's that, and you know.
You said it's not cool, but take it from me, Chris, it is.
All right, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you guys so much.
Before we wrap up, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Only that I'm looking forward to the future, you know, starting from this weekend and onwards.
Brilliant stuff. In that case, I'm going to say thank you very much, Chris D from Take Back Space and Channel CD on YouTube for being here. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you, Antonio. It's been stimulating
as well for being here. And to all of you who have joined us in the chat room, thank you very much for joining us on Mechanics of the Fourth Wall. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.
Love you guys.